Channel 8 looking. They're ready? All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, April 16th, 2026 regular meeting of the Boulder City Council. I'll go ahead and call us to order and ask for a roll call, please, Alicia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We'll start tonight's roll call as usual with Councilmember Adams.
Present.
Benjamin.
Present.
Mayor Brockett.
Present.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Present.
Marquis.
Here.
Shuhart.
Here.
Spear.
Present.
Wallach.
Present.
And Mayor Pro Tem Weiner.
Present.
Mayor, we have our quorum.
Thanks so much. All right, well, let's go to open comment. And so, Alicia, if you can go over the public participation guidelines, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you again, everyone, for your participation at tonight's City Council meeting. We ask that you abide by the rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code. This includes participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by. Individuals must display their whole name before being able to speak online. Only audio testimony is permitted during open comment. No attendee shall disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of any council meeting in a manner that obstructs the business of the meeting. This also includes failing to obey any lawful order of the presiding officer to leave the meeting room or refrain from addressing the council. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. And lastly, obscenity, other epithets based on race, gender, or religion, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the meeting will not be tolerated. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Alicia. All right, so I'm going to call 3 names at a time. Everyone will have 2 minutes to speak, and I will be strict about that time limit in the interest of fairness, and will vary the in-person and virtual speakers. So our first 3 speakers are Mary Kate Roujoui in person, Ella Price virtually, and Alex Veltman in person.
Good evening. I am Mary Kate Roujoui. I live and work in Boulder, and I serve the people of God as the rector of St. Aidan's Episcopal Church, Common Prayer for a Common Good. Last year, the city adopted the transportation maintenance fee using a fair share methodology. We will be billed at the same rate as industrial buildings, based on the square footage of our buildings. Many religious communities have large buildings and small budgets. Faith communities provide benefit to vulnerable people far more than our fair share per square foot, from emergency funds to feeding programs to space for other nonprofits and more. Please consider exempting worshiping communities from this fee. BVSD and CU are both exempt by state law. Second, the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan has envisioned community values for human flourishing. As you move forward for multi-party agreement, please audit where current zoning is no longer in agreement with the underlying land use in the new comp plan and change it. We need a path to implementation, including staff resources and a work plan. Finally, redevelopment and replacing existing structures is a necessary movement toward the comp plan goals. The purpose of the built environment is to serve people, and this is especially true for religious buildings. The Landmarks board and staff are smart, hardworking people who are constrained by a code that requires review of every building over 50 years old. The Landmarks process will soon face an untenable backlog of automatic review. It is often subjective, where decisions are made in a vacuum that cannot take into account other community priorities such as energy efficiency and affordable housing. Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. All right, now let's go to Ella Price online and then Alex Veltman and Patrick Lynn in person.
Mayor, I do not see Ella online tonight.
All right, let's go to Alex Veltman then.
Good evening. My name is Alex Veltman, and I'm a South Boulder resident. Last Thursday, you authorized a $20 million blank check for maintenance with zero accountability. You signed off on millions while staff admitted that if the SBRC boiler fails once more, our pool closes permanently. This is a clear abdication of oversight. How can you claim to be fiscally conservative while handing over 8 figures with no guarantee of results? It's a lack of stewardship today and a lack of value tomorrow. You are quoting $65 million for a 45,000 square foot SBRC, nearly $1,500 a square foot. Meanwhile, Louisville delivered a facility double that size for less than $38 million in today's dollars. Fort Collins is delivering a 70,000 square foot multi-generational hub with indoor lap lanes, large outdoor leisure pool with slides and a lazy river, 2 gymnasiums, an elevated track, a library branch, and childcare for much less per square foot than proposed for an SBRC with less amenities. Why is Boulder paying a premium for a scaled-back vision? Those lower costs in other cities include the very services that were consolidated away from us years ago. Now we are asked to pay a premium just to get a fraction of them back. We demand a line item spending plan for that $20 million and an independent cost benchmarking analysis before the May 14th study session. To the majority of this dais up for re-election in 2026, we aren't change weary. We are weary of fiduciary neglect. We are actually very open to change, and we are paying attention.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Patrick Lynn in person, and then Lynn Siegel and Brian Marin also in person.
Do I have to press the button? Yeah, sorry. All right. I want to first thank City Council for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Patrick Lynn. Full disclosure, I am not a resident of the city of Boulder, but I became co-owner of an airplane here about 7 years ago that was already based here. And as a result, Boulder came as part of the deal. And what I've experienced here since becoming part of that community has given me a perspective I think that is worth sharing. From the airport ramp, I've seen what this airport does for the community. During wildfire season, it became a forward operating base for aerial firefighting. I remember the buzz of activity during the 2020 Calwood fire from over 10 helicopters being staged here and launching from that ramp. That proximity meant extra sorties per day, critical to bringing the fire under control. And with the recent 2 wildland fires inside of city limits, it's a stark reminder of the resources we need to have on hand. There's also the medevac helicopter based here that takes off nearly daily. In fact, last night we had to pause our EAA meeting to let it back in from another life-saving mission. What that means is more than 300 people annually across the valley and mountain communities get life-saving transport because that airport is here. Close it, and those missions don't happen here anymore. Boulder has built its reputation as a place where innovation and science are valued, and our institutions reflect that. NCAR, NIST, NOAA, and CU. That reputation extends to the airport. The National Science Foundation's National Ecological Observatory Network flies research missions tracking ecosystem and climate change across the continent from that airfield. The runway is a part of Boulder's scientific infrastructure, and closing it sends a signal about how the community values those findings. I came here by circumstance, but every time I come to the Boulder airport, I'm reminded that this place is something special. A window into everything this community actually values: safety, science, and the environment. And the airport has been moving forward with the times. I know, and thanks to you all, a recent CDOT grant is helping bring unleaded fuel for the first time to the airport.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony. All right, everybody else is in person. So next we have Lynn Siegel, and then Brian Marin, and then Christine Breskel.
I'm tired of retaliations. I'm kind of getting retaliation disaster feelings. For one, my retrofit through the city of Boulder was administrated by the city of Boulder, and 10 years ago, the county, I did a retrofit with them, and they gaslighted me. This isn't encouraging, people to do energy retrofits. This is discouraging them. And it's very disheartening because I've been an advocate of energy efficiency, municipalization for 10 years, 4 ballot measures, and then when I had a sign up at a candidate forum, Rachel Friend, who is running for county treasurer, lied and said I followed her and shoved her because she didn't like my sign. Well, then they briefed the police that it wasn't about my sign. No, it wasn't about my sign. Well, it was probably about my stand on, Israel Palestine. So why can't people in this community, like the World Affairs Conference that I'm just at today, talk things out? If you got a difference with someone, connect about it, not lie about them. That was a misdemeanor I got from her and from Jessica, Matt Benjamin's wife, that I followed her 4 days after Laura Gonzalez got a felony for speaking out regards to the Palestinian justice cause. So this is a problem. We don't need this in our community. We need, Jessica and I could be great friends in the culinary arts. I'm a fabulous cook. And, but we never will be because there's retaliations. So I suggest that things change and you create the climate in this community, all of you. So do it. Life's short. Free Palestine.
All right, time is up. And I'll encourage folks to not call out community members specifically by name. All right, our next speakers are Brian Marin, Christine Breskel, and Brooke Anderson. Is Brian here? Doesn't look like it, so we'll go to Christine Breskel.
Hi, I'm here to speak about the Fund Our Future questionnaire that is stacked against the South Boulder Rec Center. The city's questionnaire asks residents to prioritize Boulder's funding needs, but it fails to include the very thing that thousands of people have signed a petition asking for and are showing up to city council meetings asking for. That's keeping core amenities, including a pool and gym, not a field house, at the South Boulder Rec Center. In fact, the questionnaire fails to even mention the words South Boulder Rec Center, or even just mention keeping core amenities at all the rec centers. Instead, the questionnaire does something sneaky. It includes an item called indoor aquatic programming. On its face, this would seem to include keeping a pool at South. But if you scroll down and read through the 4,022-word fine print describing the choices and compare it to Parks and Rec's specific proposals for the 3 rec centers, you discover that giving a high score to indoor aquatic programming means funding the exact items that Parks and Rec has proposed moving forward with at East: the rebuilt, leisure, and expanded lane lap pool, as well as another facility Parks and Rec wants. As such, we've been instructing our supporters to give 0 dots to indoor aquatic programming. Sadly, this questionnaire turned into just another way for staff to push their priorities while ignoring what the people, us, your constituents, are unequivocally stating as our priority. This is just one of the many reasons why thousands of us are now single-issue voters, and that issue is keeping South Boulder Rec's pool, gym, and outdoor natural grass soccer field. No one in the community wants a field house at South. Seriously, no one.
Thank you. I will go to Brooke Anderson, Carly Brooks, and Mary Sinwaz.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Charlie Anderson, and I am in first grade at Bear Creek Elementary, and I love to swim. I'm even doing a swim team this summer. I want the pool and activities to stay at the South Boulder Rec Center so that those of us who live so close will not have to have our parents drive us to a different rec center. When I'm older, when I can walk by myself to this one. One day, I may be on the Fairview swim team, and it would be silly if I had to leave this neighborhood for practice. I love this neighborhood. Also, my dad really loves Sasana, so please don't take that away either. Thank you.
My name is Brooke, and I'm Charlie's mom. My husband and I chose specifically to move to Table Mesa in Boulder instead of Louisville or Lafayette 10 years ago, before we had kids, because of the amazing schools, rec center, and park literally across the street. Today, I have a 3-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter, and I work full-time. In order for my daughter to do gymnastics, I have to drive 20 minutes across town to the North Boulder Rec Center in late afternoon traffic, which often requires me to stop work early to do so. For now, I've chosen for her not to do gymnastics because it's just not convenient. My son's preschool classmates who live in South Boulder choose to have birthday parties at rec centers like the Apex Center 30 minutes away in Arvada because they have an amazing indoor birthday area play place. On behalf of families with young children who are making decisions about where to live, I can say that we look to move and stay in communities that have family-friendly amenities that are both convenient and prioritized. You, City Council, are blatantly choosing to make South Boulder a less desirable community for families. Thank you.
Your time is up. Thanks, and Charlie, great job. All right, we've got Carly Brooks, then Mary Schneeweiss, and then Kent Katnick.
Hi there. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. So I'm Carly Brooks. I'm a member of the Boulder Bear Coalition, and I've been leading efforts on a paper on the Boulder Bear Protection Trash Ordinance that was passed March 2014. And this ordinance mandated bear-resistant trash carts for most everything west of Broadway, and just led to an incredible rollout, really, of about 14,700 trash and compost carts by 2016. So 2 years ago, Colorado Parks and Wildlife formed a human bear conflict working group to address the rising conflict in the state. This group represents about 60 different stakeholders, and just late last year, they made it a top priority to get more bear ordinances passed throughout Colorado. So that's really the impetus for this paper. We really want Boulder to serve as a model for other communities to emulate and highlight Boulder's success with the bear ordinance. It's definitely clear the approach and the scale at which this was done was first of its kind for Colorado. But at the same time, we also want to highlight what lessons were learned after 12 years. So specifically asking the city what could have been done differently. So we've been meeting with code enforcement, city staff to learn more and ensure our data are accurate. And then lastly, there's been no comprehensive review of this ordinance that we're at least aware of since about 2018. So this provides a really good opportunity for us to measure ongoing success and bear trends and just reevaluate what's worked well and what hasn't. So that's what's ongoing. I look forward to coming back with more updates in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Mary Schneeweiss, then Kent Katnick, and Abe Schneeweiss.
Hi there. Dear counselors, when discussing the South Boulder Rec Center, there are many points that can be discussed. Usage, amenities, equity, accessibility, energy efficiency, and it goes on and on. But the core of the issue is that our rec centers, the places where we recreate, we work out, we socialize, those places exist for the well-being of all of residents of Boulder, which is all of us here tonight. When Boulder Parks and Rec conducted their needs assessment survey about 18 months ago, the wording in the survey clearly outlined a choice. Do you want higher quality consolidated services, or do you want more basic distributed services? The response from residents was resoundingly clear across the board. Residents want distributed core services, which include fitness equipment, classes, aquatics, and gymnasium. I've attached a couple of slides, actually, you guys should have as a handout from the presentation to PRAB in October of 25, a few months ago. The city's job is to prioritize the needs and wants of residents while working within a constrained budget. And obviously that's where the hard part comes in. How can we retain core amenities at our 3 rec centers, as residents have consistently stated is their priority, without spending too much money? It doesn't make sense to even consider spending $80 million at East and another $80 million at North if it comes at the expense of keeping a pool and a gym at the other rec center, South. Residents didn't say they wanted 2 brand new net zero rec centers with amazing consolidated services. They said they wanted basic core amenities retained at all 3 rec centers, including South. I implore you to think about how you can best serve your fellow residents with regard to the existing rec centers. Surely there are more options than those that have been presented by Parks and Rec so far. If staff is calling the recent $1.5 million investment at South a significant investment and it bought us 5 to 7 years, then surely 70 to 80 million is not required to replace outdated HVAC systems and inefficient pool envelopes at North and East. Please ask more questions, demand detailed answers.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony. Now we'll go to Kent Katnick, Abe Schneeweiss, and Nate Vasilik.
Dear council members, my name is Kent Katnick. I'm a resident of Boulder and airline captain. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. As a professional pilot, I have not forgotten where I've come from, and I know the Boulder Municipal Airport is a vital asset to our community and to the aviation industry. Last Saturday, I was fortunate to fly several youth at Boulder on their very first aviation experience, and tomorrow I'll fly more than 200 people to London. Several young people had signed up to speak tonight but were not selected, and I wanted to carry their enthusiasm forward. I am deeply involved with our EAA chapter at BDU. We offer free youth flights each month and have flown over 875 kids since our chapter formed in 2019. Our chapter provides community connection. Last night, 35 people attended a talk about Amelia Earhart, and many of our members are local residents in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who value the social interaction and purpose that our activities provide. We have awarded 7 scholarships for flight training and run an annual Young Eagles rally that focuses outreach on the 2 neighboring manufactured home communities. Those neighbors also attend our meetings and movie nights. Our activities are open to all, and we welcome the community to join us. Beyond community benefits, Boulder Airport is an important training ground for pilots. The airport's existence helps reduce the amount of overhead flight training directly above the city of Boulder because of our voluntary noise abatement guidelines. I'm proud that we are finally offering unleaded fuel at our airport and continue to work with regional partners to minimize noise and other complaints. My airline employs 19,000 pilots with a target near 28,000. Those pilots who fly people to business meetings, family events, and vacations need safe places to train. Boulder is one of many U.S. airports that supports that training. Please maintain and improve this community asset. The airport supports youth education, community engagement, and pilot training. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Abe Schneeweiss, Nate Vasilik, and Rex Reinhardt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abe Schneeweiss. I'm 17 years old. I'm a junior at Fairview High School and a swimmer, and I'm also a lifeguard. I've been born and raised in Boulder, and I'd like to introduce my swim coach, Skylar Findley.
I'm Skylar Findley. Thank you to Abe. I serve as the head coach for Fairview High School boys swim team. I first want to thank all the students, parents, and community members who are here today to advocate for our home pool. Our team practices 5 days a week at South Boulder Rec Center. We have 52 boys on our roster. The girls team had close to 70 this year. If we lose pool access at South, I would expect to lose 50% of those in the first year and another 20% of those swimmers the following year. One of the swimmers who would not have stayed with the team through a pool closure is a senior who joined the team last year. He learned how to swim, got hired as a lifeguard, made a life-saving rescue as a lifeguard in December this year, and was awarded 3 different awards by the Red Cross and other organizations here in Boulder. The young swimmers who practice out of our city facilities are not taking away space from the community. They are the community. We don't need a gold line facility. It would be nice to be able to host meets in a new pool like we do now, but the most important thing for our team is access to a pool that's walking distance from school. I encourage you to vote in a way that continues providing lap lane access to our team and all the young swimmers in Boulder who will go on to be swim instructors, lifeguards, and involved members of the community. Thank you.
Thanks. And then I'll note actually that we do generally need the people who signed up to speak to be the ones who do speak. I do give some latitude for folks under the age of 18 or 18 or under. But if folks can generally keep to that, we would appreciate it. All right, now we'll go to Nate Wasilik, Rex Reinhardt, and Evan Ravitz.
Do you feel watched? Do you feel eyes on your back everywhere you go? Well, good, because you act different under surveillance. Every day when you leave for work, it's logged. Every errand you run, it's recorded. Flock is a name you've heard of a lot of, I'm sure, and I'm not going to retread that old ground. Needless to say, they are horrible for this community. What I instead want to talk about is Live View Technologies. They offer essentially the same service, AI-enabled surveillance in our communities. No privacy policy you can make or law you can enact can protect your community members from this scourge. Every time they take a video, they upload it to servers for them to process the information, and only then can you pull that information back. We saw Denver try and get rid of Flock, and their solution was to go to a company that does the exact same thing, one notch less bad. I'll take the harm reduction, but that's not the point, and I'm going to guarantee that some of the city council members who voted for that are going to lose their jobs for it. Don't make that mistake. Instead, ban AI-enabled surveillance and protect your community. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Rex Reinhardt, Evan Ravitz, and Neil Cease.
Good evening. My name is Rex Reinhardt, and I'm here to comment on the structure of Boulder's 2026 Fund Our Future Community Questionnaire. Currently, the survey is structured in a way that effectively rigs the outcome against the South Boulder Recreation Center. In the survey, residents are asked to divide 100 dots across a long list of funding topics, but there is no clear option to support keeping the South Boulder Rec Center's core amenities, including a lap pool and full gym, which are the basic recreation services that South Boulder families depend on. There is also no clear option to support equivalent core amenities at rec centers generally. The one item that appears related is indoor aquatic programming, but that does not actually give residents a way to vote for preserving South Boulder's pool or core recreation offerings. But when you read the fine print, even a high ranking there would support Park and Rec's exact plan for more lap lanes at East Boulder rather than preserving or restoring what South Boulder needs. That is not neutral. That is a design choice. If the survey does not allow residents to express support for maintaining core amenities at the South Boulder Rec Center, then the results cannot honestly be described as community support for reducing them, because not all communities are included. So all I ask is this: revise the questionnaire so residents can directly prioritize funding to preserve core amenities at South Boulder Rec Center, and do not use broad goals to assert community wants and needs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now we'll go to, and quiet folks, but that was great, Evan Ravitz, Neil Cease, and Michael Holtz.
It's amazing that this council, famous for new growth, for eventually 50,000 new residents, would be reducing rec centers from 3 to 2 and Iris Avenue from 4 lanes to 3, etc. Any 10-year-old knows that more people require more rec centers and more transportation. How did things get so whack? A big reason was that the city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and city IT director were all replaced some 5 years ago, after all but the clerk lied to council and us to obstruct the online petitioning for ballot initiatives we have, only in Boulder, at petitions.bouldercolorado.gov. If it worked right, an initiative to preserve the rec center would be easy to get on the ballot. I was on the city's campaign finance and elections working group that got online petitioning on the 2018 ballot and passed by 71%. The system is almost unusable. Top politicians in the state had the details butchered. I documented top staff lying and cheating with video and audio, so they had to be replaced. See and hear it at tinyurl.com/petition store. The incompetence due to the replacements is why public relations staff grew from 12 in 2018 to 30-something now. confirm this with other members of the city working group like longtime council members Steve Pomerantz and Alan Feinberg.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony. Now we'll go to Neil Cease, Michael Holtz, and Yvonne Bennett.
Hello, Council. My name is Niall Cease, and I am a Boulder resident against an increase of any amount to the tipped wage credit. At a time when the working class is under attack by the federal government, the city should be doing everything they can to protect workers and build a strong economy from the bottom up. It's no secret businesses are struggling right now, but it's because of an issue much more deeper than their labor costs, and I am disappointed Council has rushed to this solution without thinking or trying anything else first. Because of federal bills like H.R. 1, many people are struggling with increased healthcare costs and are worried about their job security, resulting in lower spending. I know I have personally been trying to save more because I don't know what the future holds. Reducing wages for almost 10% of Boulder's workforce will only reduce consumer confidence further and create a downward spiral on the economy. We've known since Ronald Reagan that no benefits of a wage cut will trickle down to the workers. It will only make our economy more K-shaped. In a recent study published by the University of California, Berkeley, showed a $20 minimum wage for fast food workers only increased the cost of a $4 item by 6 cents and had minimal effects on jobs. And I also think a freeze of the tipped wage would be the worst option because the living costs a median income restaurant industry worker spends almost all their money on will not freeze along with it. Additionally, people are experiencing tip fatigue and tipping less by the day, which will result in lower wages. I would finally like to ask each council member who is engaged with restaurant owners to also engage with workers and find out what they are struggling with and how even 50 cents an hour can make a difference in their lives. Some alternate ideas I had to promote more activity on Pearl Street is an alcohol common consumption zone, which the city of Arvada is doing in Old Town, and also zoning more dense housing closer to Pearl Street and reducing rents through a vacancy tax.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Michael Holtz, Yvonne Bennett, and Rohita Abujam.
My name is Michael Holtz, and I've lived in South Boulder for 48 years. I'm an architect, and I've been engaged in energy and environmental research and design consulting for over 52 years. The South Boulder Rec Center, together with the surrounding park area, is the heart and soul of South Boulder. It is where the surrounding neighborhoods and schools come to recreate and train. I have reviewed the January 2025 Perkins & Will Building Condition Assessment Report. The South Boulder Rec Center is old, but structurally sound, and is an excellent example of modern architecture, one that is worth preserving. And from a sustainability point of view, the rec center is better saved than torn down and replaced. Many of the report findings can be addressed through comprehensive phased renovation process and skillfully designed additions. While it is a worthy goal, achieving all current building code requirements is not required, and selective variances should be allowed. Energy-wise, the South Boulder Rec Center uses half the energy than the East and North Rec Centers. Natural gas used for space heating and water heating dominates building energy consumption. And if the solar thermal system, which was vandalized and removed from the site, had been properly designed and maintained, the heating energy use and cost would be dramatically reduced. So in conclusion, it is far better to save, repair, and expand as necessary the South Boulder Rec Center than to tear it down. And don't rip out the heart and soul of South Boulder. We deserve better.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Michael Bennett, Rojita Abujam, and Andrew McKenna.
Good evening. My name is Yvonne Bennett, and I'm here representing the thousands of Boulder residents who rely on and love the South Boulder Recreation Center. The level of community engagement around this issue should not be ignored. People are showing up to meetings, sending emails, signing petitions, and speaking out because we are afraid of losing something essential to our daily lives. What we are asking for is simple and very reasonable. Please fund and maintain the core amenities at South Boulder Rec Center, including a pool and gym. When we look at the options being presented, the disparity is hard to ignore. The East Boulder Rec Center is being considered for a $70 to $80 million expansion, including 2 pools and 6 additional lap lanes. The North Boulder Recreation Center would gain 15,000 square feet, warm water wellness, and expanded age well services for $65 to $85 million. And South? South is the only center being asked to make a trade-off. South is the only center at risk of losing a pool. Why are we prioritizing North and East with amenities, expansion, and outrageous renovation cost, while deprioritizing South with fewer amenities? We also know from the city's own facilities director that projects take at least 5 years from planning to completion. That makes this timing very critical. If we delay action on South, we risk real gaps in service for the families, seniors, and youth who depend on the center every single day. So I urge you to please listen to the community. We are showing up, we are engaged, and we are asking for you to prioritize South Boulder in a way that is consistent and equitable with the rest of the city. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Yvonne. All right, now we'll go to Rojita Abujam and Andrew McKenna will be our last speaker.
Hi, I'm Rajita, and I live in South Boulder. I know you all have heard many speeches from folks who use the rec center and the pool there. My story is a little different. I do not use the rec center, and I'm here to explain why. I moved to Boulder from New York City less than 4 years ago. Trying to fit in, I went for a hike. I was outpaced wildly by someone probably twice my age. Welcome to Boulder, right? Anyway, that afternoon, all charged up, I went online and noted down all the classes I wanted to take at the nearby rec center going forward. Turns out only one of the 10 classes I was interested in was held at South Boulder Rec Center. The rest were in the east or the north. Sobo hardly had any classes. Not surprisingly, a month later, I canceled my membership. As a mother of a 6-year-old back then, I needed something nearby, a quick workout without the commute, and our South Rec Center just didn't offer me enough. It had a neglected vibe. I signed up elsewhere. As for my child, I started taking her to East and North for her swim and gymnastic lessons. Oh, and by the way, all the cool swim birthday parties for our Sobo kids happen at East and North as well. Why is that, though? Sobo property prices are wild. We pay a good chunk of the taxes, I would assume. So why is it that this particular rec center is being treated like an afterthought? Perhaps I am partly responsible. I mean, I canceled my membership, right? Now you see the connection. Less facilities, low membership, low funding, and the cycle continues. So here I am, requesting you all to please give the neighborhood what it deserves, and let's break this cycle. Help us want to go to our rec centers. Let's have a pool our kids can walk to. I truly am really thankful for what you guys do, so when you make a decision, please keep us Sobo folks in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Andrew McKenna.
Yeah, hi. My name is Andrew McKenna. I live in Boulder, and I and my partners own and operate Journeys Aviation and Mile High Gliding businesses at the Boulder Airport. Boulder Airport is an economic engine that, by CDOT's estimate, provides upwards of $78 million in revenue, $23 million in payroll, and I will point out tens of thousands of dollars in sales taxes that go into the Boulder General Fund, not into the airport fund. Throughout the year, Journeys employs as many as 70 different people, mostly part-time staff, mostly young persons in college and high school, even middle schoolers, and mostly their first job in the workforce. These are entry-level jobs, but they lead to aviation careers. Many of our staff progress on to become professional pilots, and we have many former students and employees who are now flying for the airlines. Boulder Airport has overwhelming support from the community. The Boulder Community Conversation Project, conducted at great expense to the airport fund, demonstrated that more than 84% of respondents expressed support for the airport. The misguided and failed ballot measures of last year were financially supported by only 4 persons, 2 of which didn't even live in the city. We don't need to postpone decisions about the airport any longer. We don't need another referendum. We don't need more discussion. The community has already provided an answer, 84% in favor of the airport. I'm urging council to commit to support the future of the airport at your study session next week and beyond. Logical and financially responsible action would be to have the council vote to return to taking FAA grants and decide to make Boulder Airport the best airport it can be. The time has come to stop the indecision and the mischief and commit to a path into the future that provides clarity for the airport community, clarity for airport businesses, and clarity for the city without wasting millions of taxpayer dollars. A bright future awaits us. Finally, okay.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony. All right, that brings us to the end of our speakers. I want to thank everyone who came out to speak to us tonight, and particularly thank the young people who spoke to us at the dais and who are here tonight experiencing local democracy. I'll turn to city staff to see if there are any responses.
Good evening, Council, and I'll echo the mayor's comments of just appreciate everyone who came out to speak tonight. Just one item that I wanted to address is several speakers talked about the Fund Our Future engagement that's happening right now. We have both an online survey as well as some in-person engagement opportunities. We have one more in-person, or not in-person, but virtual engagement this Sunday. So if you haven't joined that, you can sign up on the city website if you search for Fund Our Future. On the survey that's out there, and the exercise is really a prioritization exercise at the services level, and just to try and kind of do that exercise of trade-offs. 4 dots is the current level of service that we provide. 3 or less means you think the city should provide less of that. And then if it's 5 or more, you think that the city should provide more of that service. So that's how we set it up, just to try and have community members experience a little bit of that trade-off exercise. So wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thanks. Teresa, do you have anything?
I do, Mayor. There was a speaker who spoke about the competency of staff, particular city staff, and I just want to say my experience is that city staff are wildly competent, and my colleagues do an excellent job.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you for saying that, Teresa. We have excellent staff at the city. All right, do we have any questions for city staff? I got Tara. Matt.
I do. I want to talk for a second about Reverend Mary Kate's comment in regards to the transportation fee and exemptions. This was the exact thing that I was worried about. I was so far away then, and I'm wondering when we are going to be talking about exemptions, or if we are. Where are we with the exemptions?
I don't remember the exact timeline on the transportation maintenance fee coming back, but I'll get back to you on that.
Thanks, Tara. I was going to ask that same question. Matt?
My question centers around some things we've heard from some of the speakers regarding a field house being at the site of the South Boulder Rec Center. And if I recall from our conversation last week, scenarios A and B didn't really reflect a field house. It really reflected a new rec center, one with a pool and one without. And so I just want to sort of just clarify, is this semantics, or is there indeed still a consideration for a field house, or are we confusing the one without the pool for what might be considered a field house? I just want to sort of level set, and just for everybody, even for me myself, if I might perhaps misunderstand what those two scenarios reflect.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And if you go back and look at the materials from April 9th, we laid out for rec centers kind of two scenarios for each one, an A and a B. And if you look at the description of those two, they do describe rec center services in each of those. So I'd encourage folks to go back and look at that narrative to kind of describe how we were showing what the various trade-offs would be for the various rec centers across the city.
Okay, well then I'll just recap real quick for the audience. Scenario A is a new building, no pool, additional amenities to what's there, including indoor track, ninja studio, not included elsewhere, and then we saw the price tag for that. And then scenario B was pool, gymnasium, recreational areas that match current service levels. So I just want to be clear, not like a field house, but one with and one without, just so that we're all talking about the same thing here, so it is helpful as we really try to work on those priorities and really try to advocate for what's the best thing for our communities. Certainly as a South Boulder resident, we want to make sure that that's done right. So I just want to level set. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Not seeing any other questions. Do you have a question? I do. Yeah, go ahead.
I had a question about the bear ordinance. As a former commissioner for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I was around when that committee was being considered, and I know that that has been a challenge. So just curious if there was any kind of evaluation that's being conducted from the 2018 plan.
Yes, council member. The group of community members working on that have been in contact with city staff. City staff is in receipt of that proposed ordinance. We are looking it over. However, there's a component here that would be council direction to move forward or not with this kind of ordinance, and so would encourage the community members to think about speaking to council members.
All right, now seeing no other hands, does anybody want to give a very brief response to open comment? Tara.
I want to give a shout out to Charlie Bresco, 6 years old. Great job. Maybe you know my granddaughter Shira. She's in the same grade at the same school.
Ryan?
Yeah, I just wanted to also address that this is not the place to criticize individuals. My door is open. If folks want to talk about background on issues and ideas, but it adds no weight to the argument that one might have about things we ought to do or consider. And I'd urge our folks joining that this is not a place to be criticizing individuals, former or current. Thanks.
Taisha?
I just wanted to thank those workers who came to speak on behalf of maintaining the status quo for the tipped offset. And I look forward to continuing to hear from those who will be directly impacted. I believe we've had disproportionate data on certain stakeholder groups and impacts over others. And so continue to show up, continue to meet with us individually so that we can have as much data from as many stakeholders that will be impacted as possible. Thank you.
Thanks. And I've got Nicole online.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And thanks to everybody who spoke tonight. I just wanted to ask if people who are speaking could please stop blaming staff or attributing nefarious intentions to staff. They are public servants of the highest order, really doing impossible work every day to make our city run. And it makes it really challenging to listen to the points you're bringing up when you are denigrating staff. For the people who spoke to the Fund Our Future survey, I just wanted to remind people that there is a place where you can add notes. I really encourage people to fill it out, even if it's not exactly what you would have wished. I am in Washington, D.C. this week. It is a very stark reminder of how things go when we fail to participate in official channels of a democratic process. So please use that notes section if you need to, but really encourage people to fill out that survey. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicole. All right. Yes, Mark.
Very quickly, I want to support my colleagues who have made comments about the inappropriateness of going after staff. That's not their job, and they are not in a position to respond. It's our job, and if you want to criticize us, that's fine. That's part of what we do. But criticizing people who are not in a position to respond to you does not advance your arguments. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, that's all the hands. I will thank folks again for coming out and speaking to us and participating in local democracy. We are going to take, if we can have quiet in the audience, please. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute recess and reconvene for the business portion of the meeting at 6:30. Thanks so much. Mr. Benjamin.
Do you have enough space? Am I crowding you?
I'm like man-spreading over here. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to gavel us back to order. And let's go to our consent agenda, please, Elisha.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Our consent agenda is item 3 on tonight's agenda, and it consists of items 3A through 3I.
Great. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? I've got one myself, but Rob?
And then after you.
Yeah, it's on G. I'm just curious, have the water lines been installed? And if they have, do the residents pay for a share of that when they petition?
And Chris, maybe just tell what this item is regard to.
Yeah, I can answer that question, and this is related to item G, which is related to the Spring Valley Estates annexation. And the short answer, and we can add more detail in the second reading memo, is yes, no, the pipes have not been installed yet, and yes, the residents will pay for that infrastructure. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call on myself. I'm going to ask a quick question on item H, which is Ordinance 8745, which is about certain changes and clarifications to the land use code. So Chris, there was a recommendation that planning board made that would alter the substance of this ordinance in relation to whether folks could ask for 3-story buildings for educational, cultural, and other facilities. Is that recommendation of theirs included in what we would be passing tonight?
I can answer that.
Look to Brad, or looks like Lisa may be online here as well. So Brad, maybe if you want to start.
Yeah, Brad Mueller, Planning and Development Services Director, and either Carl or Lisa can speak to that specifically, but I'll let them answer.
Yeah, thank you, Brad, and thank you, Mayor, for the question. So Planning Board made a recommendation to change the ordinance. Staff did not update the ordinance in accordance with that recommendation. We felt that the change that they had recommended was something that was going to require a lot more study and would need to be pulled out of the ordinance in order to move forward with that recommendation. So the ordinance that's in your packet tonight is how it was presented originally to Planning Board. It has not been changed as a result of the recommendation.
Great, thanks for that. And Lisa, can you introduce yourself for the record, please?
Yes, thank you. Lisa Hood, I'm Principal Planner, Planning and Development Services.
Great, so thanks for confirming that. And I'll just say, I think that was a good approach to take. I appreciate that staff is carrying forward the original recommendation, and I do support staff's approach to this rather than trying to make the alteration that Planning Board made a recommendation about so that we can just cleanly allow three stories to be requested by these facilities as the ordinance originally intended. So I'll be voting yes on that tonight. Yes, Tara.
Aaron, I agree with you, and I just wanted to bring up that of the options that were given to us, I believe it was option 2 that I supported. I do not support adding additional onerous requirements onto a property owner when they merely just want to build a really nice-looking 3-story building with architectural design. I have one more thing to say is that, is Mark Wolf here? Great, okay. I am going to bring up that I shared a suggestion with staff related to another code cleanup for this ordinance. Specifically, I asked them to look into a quick fix for restrictions related to total retail square footage for breweries that are caught, and that ordinance is causing some unintended consequences for a brewery that is just trying to be innovative and creative. So, Mark, do you want to provide any additional information or speak to this at this time or a different day? Or Brad?
Yeah, Brad Mueller again, Director of Planning and Services. And I know Mark has spoken with some of the ownership of that, so if he wants to augment this, we're aware of the interest and the request. We're researching both the history of how that square footage was set up and whether there's any tie-in to other regulating circumstances at, say, the state level or such. So we don't have a clear answer on those things at this time, but we understand the interest.
Just say that I'm hoping that we could add it into this omnibus bill if, you know how I like to rush things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Matt?
I just want to speak to H in just a comment of this is awesome. This is exceptional work to make these changes. We love seeing these improvements coming in. And I certainly the one with the garage door. Similarly, that came about because a resident came to me and said, I don't understand how this is possible. And I really appreciate staff. When I raised that issue to staff, they said, we'll look at it. And here it is in the change. Sadly, that won't impact this owner because they had a time frame. And so they had to march forward, and they unfortunately will have to still rip out their driveway. But hopefully for anybody going forward, this will be a helpful fix that will allow them to take their garage, do what they want to do with it, and not have those unintended consequences ripple, cost money, and change their sort of life state. I will just add one other thing, that coming at these one-offs to solve these issues is helpful, but I do think that, once again, this is why it's so important for us on the backside of the comp plan, and I see Brad smiling because he knows where I'm going, is that we think about revamping Title IX, because we will clean up so many of these in one fail catch rather than playing whack-a-mole as they come up, which I know is a lot for staff to work on in these interspersal times. So I just want to congratulate staff. This is a great job.
Well, we appreciate that feedback, and we strive for awesomeness on a regular basis. So, thank you.
And achieve it, too.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the consent agenda, or perhaps a motion?
I make a motion to pass the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Alicia, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir, thank you. We'll start the roll call on consent agenda items 3A through 3I with Councilmember Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhart.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
Wallach.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Weiner.
Yes.
And Councilmember Adams.
Yes.
The consent agenda is hereby approved unanimously.
Thanks so much. Let's go to our public hearing, please.
Yes, sir. Our public hearings are item 5 on tonight's agenda. 5A is the second reading and consideration of a motion to adopt Ordinance 8748, enacting Chapter 8-12 Metropolitan Districts, BRC 1981, and setting forth related details. Our second item under that same public hearing is the consideration of a motion to adopt Resolution 1378, approving a model metropolitan district service plan for use by applicants in the formation of a metropolitan district within the boundaries of the city of Boulder, Colorado, and setting forth related details.
All right, as staff gets settled here to present, we're excited to bring to you the regulatory framework for metropolitan districts that council asked us to proceed with at the end of last year. And with that, I will turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Mark Wolf, to kick things off.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Mark Wolf, Assistant City Manager. Joining me up here this evening is Sarah Geiger, Senior Counsel for the city. We also are joined by Kim Crawford from Butler Snow, who is available for questions, as is Brad tonight. We are here for the second reading and public hearing of a legislative package designed to establish a comprehensive local regulatory framework for metropolitan districts in Boulder. This includes the adoption of Ordinance 8748 and Resolution 1378, which is referred to as the Model Service Plan. Next slide. Our presentation will go through the background, previous direction from council. We'll provide the motion language and then dive into some of the key provisions of both the ordinance, the model service plan, and then provide some of the feedback that we've received during this most recent process and some of the staff opinion on the feedback. Next slide. Always helpful. We are throwing many different economic development financing tools forward, and always think it's helpful to see where whatever tool we're talking about fits in with the others. So for metro districts, unlike GIDs, which are council governed, or BIDs and downtown development authorities, which have appointed boards by council, Metropolitan districts are governed by an elected board and are primarily used to finance large-scale infrastructure, while other tools like TIF can be used for redevelopment. Metro districts provide a way for developers to fund public infrastructure upfront and be reimbursed through a property tax mill levy. Next slide. This initiative began as we were exploring the various different economic development tools available to us. We had a previous conversation in November of last year where council provided a nod of 5 directing staff to develop a local framework. In January, we came back where you all provided a little bit more specific policy direction to ensure these districts align with our goals, while establishing some guardrails, most notably a focus on commercial metro districts. The first reading was on April 2nd, and we are back this evening. Next slide. We will have the 2 separate motions tonight as noted on the ordinance and the resolution. We can bring those back up after the public hearing. Next slide. Ordinance 8748 serves as the legal foundation for our regulatory oversight. It essentially moves metro district formation from the state default process to our local process. Next slide. The ordinance outlines legislative intent of allowing and regulating metro districts to strengthen economic vitality and quality of life through a framework for investment in necessary infrastructure. Importantly, the ordinance also establishes that metro districts in Boulder will be of commercial focus, no less than 90% of the assessed value of the entire project, and no less than 90% of the square footage of the entire area within the district's boundaries are used for commercial purposes. Next slide. More specifically, Ordinance 8748 enacts Chapter 812 of the BRC. This gives the city authority to regulate every stage of a district's life from formation to dissolution. It mandates that no district can be formed within the city boundaries without council's explicit approval of a service plan. And it ensures that any material modification to a district's powers must come back to council for approval. Next slide. The ordinance also establishes the process for reviewing a service plan or the detailed plan for a proposed metro district. Mandatory standards and criteria and financial oversight, which I will expand on in a moment. Next slide. The service plan review process provides the roadmap essentially for how a service plan is reviewed by the city. Next slide. The process starts through preliminary review, what we're calling a concept plan, where staff would conduct a preliminary review of the project scope to ensure alignment with city goals during an early stage. The deadline for concept plan review is 45 days before the final submittal. Then we would move into the formal submittal of the model service plan, of the service plan itself, which the petitioner would formally submit a draft using our model service plan as the template for official consideration. Those deadlines for submission to the city are April 30th for a November election and October 31st for a May election. It's important to note in this ordinance, based on council's policy direction, to allow for the consideration of metro districts for November of 2026, that those deadlines do not apply in the first year that this ordinance is enacted. Next slide. There is a comprehensive review once a service plan is submitted to the city that is conducted across departments. Once staff determines that the service plan is ready for council consideration, a public hearing is scheduled for action. We also negotiate a binding intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, that establishes operational and financial responsibilities. A model IGA is attached in your packet. Next slide. Council does have specific criteria that if all 4 of these criteria are not met, they must disapprove of the service plan. And so to summarize these four, 1, the Metro District is actually necessary. 2, the city or another entity cannot provide the service or the investment. 3, the Metro District is financially viable. And 4, the Metro District can pay off the debt. Even if those 4 criteria are met, council still retains the broad discretion to approve, disapprove, or approve with conditions, so long as the decision is not arbitrary or capricious. Next slide. A key provision is the 5-year dissolution trigger. If a district hasn't issued debt within 5 years of its creation, it must provide a status update, and council has the authority to initiate dissolution. Council can also extend that 5-year deadline at that time. This ensures that districts don't sit dormant without actually building the infrastructure promised through the service plan. The ordinance also provides enforcement mechanisms, including the ability to withhold building permits, seek injunctions, or impose penalties for noncompliance. Next slide. While the ordinance provides the overall authority, the model service plan is the mandatory rule book for how a district must operate day to day. It is important to note that submitted service plans to the city may deviate from the model service plan, and that deviation is subject to negotiation and ultimately at council's discretion. Next slide. The purpose of the model service plan is to provide standardization for uniform form and content that all petitioners must substantially follow. So it's a starting place for a metro district. There's guardrails from a regulatory standpoint where it provides a baseline of the city's expectations. And it also provides where our authority is in terms of council's discretion in reviewing any deviations from that plan, or under what circumstances any sort of deviation could be considered. Next slide. Within our model service plan, there are many provisions, so we're highlighting a few of importance this evening. Again, that 90% non-residential threshold is outlined within the model service plan. Also, it is important to remember that the infrastructure funded by these districts, streets, utilities, parks, etc., must be dedicated to the city for long-term ownership. Exceptions to that can be negotiated through a service plan that is submitted. But that is the general fallback, is that all infrastructure is dedicated to the city. Next slide. One of the more important areas of regulation within the model service plan is the mill levy caps. To ensure tax certainty, we have implemented hard mill levy caps within this package. The maximum debt mill levy is 50 mills. When you add in the allowance for operations and maintenance, the total maximum aggregated mill levy is capped at 65 mills. This cap ensures that future tenants and business owners have some type of predictable ceiling on the property taxes. Next slide. We've also included a 40-year debt discharge rule. Any debt or developer reimbursement agreement that hasn't been paid off after 40 years is automatically forgiven. This prevents a district from taxing property owners in perpetuity for the same initial infrastructure costs. To prevent, quote, self-dealing, where a developer-controlled board sets excessive interest rates on debt, we're also requiring a third-party external financial advisor. This third party must certify that interest rates are consistent with market standards to protect the district's long-term solvency. And last, we also require mandatory disclosures for future property owners so they know exactly that they're buying into a metro district with additional taxes. Next slide. The Boulder Regional Improvements Mill Levy is an additional mandatory 3 mill levy that provides regional scale infrastructure improvements that benefit the broader community. This reflects the reality that larger commercial developments create a need for systems that extend beyond the property lines, such as regional transit or arterial road expansions. Other cities like Aurora and Brighton use similar regional mill levies to ensure that new developments contribute their fair share across the region. Next slide. Okay, turning to stakeholder feedback, which is the last section here. Since the first reading, we've engaged with the development community to ensure the framework is functional while maintaining the guardrails that we're proposing. Proposed Ordinance 8748 and the draft model service plan were made available publicly on March 3rd, and comments were solicited through the drafting of the first reading memo. We received feedback from a handful of firms and individuals, mostly with experience in development and or metro districts. Next slide. There's a lot of words on this slide, but I'll just summarize the feedback that we've heard and some of the staff reaction to that feedback. Theme 1 focuses on privately placed debt. Feedback expressed concerns regarding our interest rate controls and the prohibition on compounding interest for developer-held debt. From staff perspective, it's important to remember that early stage district boards are often composed of the developers themselves, meaning they are essentially negotiating with themselves. To prevent self-dealing, we've maintained that requirement for an external financial advisor to certify that all interest rates are consistent with current market standards. Regarding compounding interest, if a third-party advisor provides a specific certification that it is a necessity for a project's specific risk profile, that is something that can be negotiated through individual service plans. For themes 2 and 3, related to the definition of debt and the concern over double counting, stakeholders requested that annually appropriated reimbursement agreements be excluded from debt caps. This is another, essentially another tax or debt obligation at the outset. So from staff perspective, excluding them would create a transparency gap where the district's true overall debt may not be fully visible to the public. So we're maintaining that that type of agreement, the reimbursement agreement, is included in the 50 mil cap to ensure there's no hidden debt within the district. To ease some of the concerns that were raised, especially in the refunding category, we have clarified that when a district issues a formal bond to take out or refund one of these agreements, only the new principal counts against the issuance limit, which prevents that double counting issue. There also was a concern raised about if you take out the maximum amount of debt allowable initially and you go to refinance or refund, and that amount is above the maximum, that currently wouldn't be allowed in the model service plan. So if that is something anticipated, again, that would need to be provided at the outset in the service plan submitted and would have to be negotiated. Theme 4 relates to rolling off some of the mill levy if the total, once a district's debt falls below 50% of its total assessed valuation. So this was a request from some of the stakeholders. While that type of low debt to value ratio indicates a healthy district overall, lifting the cap removes the primary protection for future owners within the district. Future tenants and other businesses. So staff recommends providing a predictable long-term ceiling overall, regardless of that debt to value ratio. And last, clarifying the regional improvements or the Boulder Regional Improvements BRI mill levy. We have clarified some of the difference between impact fees, which address one-time project-specific impacts. This really reflects an ongoing contribution to regional infrastructure that supports the large-scale commercial activity over a longer period of time. Again, similar to other cities that have metro districts in place. Next slide. And one more, please. Okay, we are done with the presentation. Several staff available for your questions.
Thanks so much for that, Mark. Questions for city staff? Mark, Tina? Rob,
Just a
Matt?
few questions. Just refresh my recollection. What was the mill levy we did for the library district? How large was that? I didn't remember either.
We'll have it shortly.
Okay, let me just move on. For a commercial property, let's say valued at $2 million, what's the actual dollar amount of a 65 mil tax? I'm making everybody do math.
Mm-hmm.
We can come back to your other question if you'd like. The mill levy was 3.5 for the library district.
So this is 3.5, so this is about 17 times what we did for the library. Okay, that's why I asked the second question of what does it look like in dollar numbers for a $2 million property, and we can extrapolate for other values.
Annual tax on 2 million is about $38,000. 65 mils. That was quickly, so I'd have to double check that.
Wow.
And I'll point out, those numbers are true. That is the maximum cap. We would be evaluating, based on the service plan submitted to the city, whether or not that mill levy is appropriate based on the improvements needed to be made. And so that would be a part of the evaluation of a service plan that's submitted. Many times, metro districts don't go to the mill levy cap, but that allowance helps with the initial borrowing to make the initial investment financially viable. So it is a balance of finding what is the mill levy that ultimately is needed to support the ongoing debt versus the total allowance, which helps with some of the initial financing.
A couple of other small questions. One of the standards is to show inadequacy of services. What's the standard for making that demonstration?
I might yield to one of our legal experts on, especially in other cities. I don't know, Kim, if maybe you could repeat that question.
Repeat it?
Yeah.
How does one demonstrate inadequacy of services for purposes of moving forward with, a bond measure, for instance?
Sarah Geiger from the City Attorney's Office. I can try that one. So the services generally for metro districts refers to capital improvements and infrastructure, essentially. So it is a streamlined way or potentially more efficient or a way to develop infrastructure without relying on the city's dime, essentially. So there are other services that metro districts can provide, but generally they come into play with infrastructure. But I can have Kim correct me if I'm wrong there.
I was just keying off the slide that said there has to be a demonstration of inadequacy, and I'm just wondering how is that done and what is the standard?
Yeah, I think certainly there's some discretion there, but the types of things that staff would look at in terms of evaluation are the public improvements necessary to facilitate the project, are they funded within the city? Are they scheduled within a reasonable amount of time? I think if we were looking at a scenario where the city was ultimately had a clear path for investment within a reasonable period of time, maybe we would say it's not needed. Generally, the scale of infrastructure, to Sarah's point, is what necessitates a larger initial investment.
And I would then, from that, ask a following question, which is the plan for repayment and determining the adequacy of the plan for repayment. What standards are applied to that to make that determination?
Again, similar in that there's some discretion there, but we would look at the overall tax burden on the properties. So how many properties, how many parcels, how many potential owners are within the district? How long are we proposing? Is the district proposing to take out the debt? the scale, the total mill levy, all of that type of stuff. And so really it would be an analysis of the entire picture. What is the total cost of infrastructure? How much does the Metro District need to borrow? So on and so forth. So we would be really looking at the whole picture for reasonableness.
And there is a financial plan that's required to be submitted with the service plan, and that is a major part of the reason why. And just to go back, council member, to your question with respect to the library district, Kim reminded me that there is a mill levy cap for the library district of 5 mills, and that is also because the library district uses that revenue for operations only, and we're talking about Metro District for, again, large scale infrastructure and capital improvements, which is a whole other animal, right?
Also large scale expense. My final question, am I correct in reading that the calculation for approval of the district is it 90% of the assessed valuation of the properties or 90% of the properties themselves?
It's both. It's 90% of the assessed value and the square footage of the property.
Does not that, is that not prejudicial to small businesses who may have a different view of the world, but they're going to be in effect overwhelmed by large properties in terms of determining whether this a construct is going to be approved?
So the 90% threshold is for the entire boundaries of the proposed Metro District. So that just determines whether or not the type of district is allowable under this ordinance. How big the individual units or parcels are within the whole district, that's not governed by these regulations. So the 90% is looking at, is this primarily a commercial area? That is the standard in the ordinance.
And is that the vote? It's 90% of the assessed valuation to determine whether there's an approval by the district businesses or residents as to whether this is approved?
Yeah, and the initial election is whomever the property owners are within the proposed district. So it could be multiple owners. Typically, it is a limited number of owners at the initial creation of a district. Sarah, if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the election generally is just the developer. It's usually one or two landowners in the beginning, and Metro districts generally are used for new development, so there isn't really much there. And the point of the definition for the commercial or industrial district was for the purpose of council indicating the city's policy direction that Metro districts were more appropriate for commercial uses at this time, so.
That's great. Good. Okay. Tina, then Rob, then Matt.
Yeah, following up a little bit with Mark's question, if it's 90% commercial, in this case, could there be some residential then, the other 10%? And then my question is, if the developer continues to own those residential units but rents them, can those tenants also become voters, or is it only people who own the property?
Yeah, I was going to punt to Kim, but Kim is saying that residents vote as well. But yeah.
Okay, and then we would, as a council, we would understand the makeup of the voters that.
So once the district is created, there is a board that governs the Metro District. So that board makeup will change over time, but as Sarah mentioned, typically initially, who is voting on creating that Metro District is only going to be one or two property owners, likely the developers, and then slowly that board makeup will change as more owners and tenants move in over time.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think it is really a point of clarification on this one. Because I thought in the reading in the slide said that for metro districts, it was 5 to 7 elected. So I'm just confused on what was just shared. Can somebody help me out on that?
So the electorate is pretty restricted and limited for Metro District. It's only within the boundaries of the Metro District. And generally, the district is created with empty land, essentially. And so the electorate would consist of the 1 or 2 property owners within that Metro District area. And that would be, and those electors would be the one doing the vote. So generally, typically, it's a developer or 2, and they would also elect the board of the 5 to 7 members in the beginning.
And so then if they do rent out properties over time, then those resident renters would be eligible to participate in the board and will all automatically be able to vote.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And in your experience, have you ever seen conflicts when that makeup changes over time? Or would there be anything we should be looking out for or anticipating?
Yes, frequently. That's
oh, great.
Why,
okay.
Yeah.
Good.
We attempted to follow the direction and make the model service plan and ordinance as protective as possible to try and reduce that potential conflict.
Okay. Another question I had is, it talks about the fee that goes with the application. And I'm just curious, what kind of numbers does that look like in general for projects that are at the scale of one that we know that might come forth in our community?
We did estimate, typically we try and estimate what cost recovery looks like depending on the type of analysis. On the spot, and Brad can correct me, we're anticipating a $15,000 application fee for a metro district.
Okay, and does that fee, is that also subject to the approval by the external fee advisor, or is that done simply by the city?
That's simply the city's fee for reviewing the service plan.
Okay, and then upon the selection of the external financial or the external fee advisors, well, the financial advisor, I think there's more clarification, but does it have to be mutually agreed on by the city and the developer? It's just the city?
The external fee advisor or the financial advisor, when it comes to privately placed debt, would be in the hands of the Metro District itself. So they would hire an external advisor and submit that certification.
Okay, but so the city is not involved in selecting that advisor? Okay.
No.
And is that an issue ever upon, like, is there any discussion that you've seen in experience where they've disagreed on those outcomes from the advisors?
I'm thinking of punting to Kim on this, but it's my understanding that the external financial advisors are accredited and professionals, and the idea is to have a quote-unquote neutral advisor opine on the propriety of the interest rate or the fees, but I'll allow Kim to go ahead and augment that.
Hi, Kim Crawford with Butler Snow, and we're acting as special counsel to the city with respect to service plans. There are really only a couple, well, first of all, your service plan is going to require that it's an independent financial advisor, so they can't be affiliated with the developer at that point. There are really probably only 4 or 5 firms in the state that we see do this, and one of them is your city's financial advisor, Hilltop Securities. They also provide that service to metro districts when asked. So, you know, I really feel very comfortable with most of the financial advisor certifications that we see. I haven't felt that there was really anything that has ever come up that's been untoward or something that would be a conflict of interest.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
All right, we got Rob, then Matt, then Nicole, and then Taishu.
Thanks. It said in the slide presentation that model service plan lifetimes are 40 years. Is this based on, is this a set number that the city has agreed to? Is it based on scope, size?
Yeah, so the 40-year provision related to the timeline for debt. So that is essentially the clock for the initial debt that is taken on to build the infrastructure. Metro districts can live in perpetuity after that, mostly for, at that point, operating and maintenance. But the idea being that most of that debt, and again, the reason for the mill levy would be retired within 40 years. That's the provision within the service plan, the model service plan.
And in most practices, do they tend to end at that 40-year debt, or do they tend to continue on?
I'd have to yield to others on that question.
Not that old of a concept, so.
Statutory debt limits and the length of debt by state law cannot exceed 40 years. So typically also that kind of relates to federal tax purposes, because the IRS doesn't want anybody, even cities, issuing bonds that have a useful, or that the bonds go out longer than the useful life. So IRS is very interested in a district not issuing bonds for 40 years when the average life is only 20 years. So that would be a problem, and that's something when the districts would actually issue bonds that would come up. But I think really most of it is that you don't want them paying for debt for 40 years, for 80 years even, like when the average life was 20 to 30 years. And again, I don't see that as an issue that's pretty standard in the industry, and I don't see anybody really complaining about that. And typically it's a little bit shorter even. They might go to 30 years or even 25 years.
Okay, thank you. And following on with that point, once the debt is retired, if this is returned to the city or if it's dissolved, what is the metric that we use for the value added of the horizontal infrastructure, the roads, the water, the sewer, and the age of them and the maintenance that we're going to be inheriting?
Yeah, I think that's something that you'd have to, usually accountants figure that out, is what the useful life is and how much is left. But if you're inheriting 20-year-old infrastructure, it might not have a value that is commensurate with what's outstanding. But you would get it back after the debt was paid off, or after the bonds were paid or the district was dissolved.
But within that IGA, is there any type of language that speaks to that, the aging infrastructure?
I don't think so, but I don't think there's language in the IGA. But I also think that it has not been an issue because they are really limited to that 40 years. And under state law, even if the city said they could go to 50, under state law you can't go more than 40. Okay. So I think that they are limited, and that's usually the useful life of streets, water, sewers, and other public infrastructure.
Yeah, and to clarify, most of the infrastructure would be remitted to the city after it's built, and so then it would be our responsibility to maintain immediately after that.
That makes sense.
True, thank you.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Just want to clarify with regards to some of the staff recommendations and the community engagement. There were a few, what was the phrase that we used? I want to use the right term. Oh yeah, policy alternatives. There was a couple of those. Are those alternatives baked into this ordinance?
They are not. Most of the alternatives relate to the model service plan. There was one change based off of feedback in the ordinance that we mentioned to clarify the purpose of metro districts. That change was made. For the model service plan, our approach generally was to note where there could be a reasonable deviation from what is currently drafted. We did not make changes to the model service plan, but certainly at council discretion, in concert with staff analysis, if a service plan was submitted that essentially looked at some of those alternatives mentioned in the memo, it's something we would consider in the context of whatever that individual service plan is.
All right, so just to be clear, because I read, like, as such, staff is recommending only limited changes to the model service plan based on community feedback. And so I took that as those alternatives were those recommendations. So what you're saying is they're not a part of the ordinance or the resolution 1378 for the model service plan. Is that correct?
Those policy alternatives are not in the model service plan.
Okay. And remind me, how would those be put in so that they could be levered? I mean, I think when we're doing community engagement and we come up with an alternative that's sort of agreed upon and shared between staff and community, those are always really good to put in because it validates the engagement that is intrinsic to the process. So I'm just sort of curious, where do those then fit in if they're sitting here right now, not in Resolution 1378?
Council member, the council has the discretion actually today to potentially change the model service plan. And so if you all agreed that you preferred the alternative approach, and that's why those were provided, to give you the option to change the model service plan. From a legal perspective, we'd recommend that if you preferred those alternatives, that those changes actually be made in the model service plan and not necessarily in a service plan that's submitted later on, because the model service plan serves as the guardrail. I would also say that those alternatives were not alternative positions agreed upon with the particular stakeholders. Those were alternatives that we came to recommend sort of as either middle ground or potential option, not, something that we went back to do community engagement with that particular option and say, hey, do you all agree to this? So just so you're aware.
Well, that's fair. I mean, any alternative that's a middle ground sounds like that's a good thing that we're hearing them. So maybe understand the timing. Because April 30th is a real deadline for anybody who would want to submit. If we were to add these policy alternatives, would that change the cadence of the resolution? In which case, do we get into a time pinch for that April 30th then not being a viable date if we were to make these alternatives added now?
So the deadlines do not apply this year. So we wouldn't be running into that. I think a longer delay would inhibit our ability as staff to properly analyze the service plan that is submitted and provide you all runway before November. So there's that timing issue. But in terms of the ordinance deadlines, that those wouldn't apply for 2026. For the resolution, if you made changes, we would have to bring it back depending on how substantive the next regular meeting is what we would target.
Well, that would be a question for you because these are the alternatives that staff came up with. So it would be up to you to decide how substantive and how difficult it would be to implement.
Without additional options, the ones outlined, I would think we could turn those around quickly as changes to the resolution.
I will just add, though, that there are policy alternatives for council, but they weren't staff's recommendations. So based on council's direction, the current version of the model service plan incorporates staff's recommendations. So just to clarify that.
Appreciate clarifying that and the timing and cadence. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Nicole and then Taisha.
Thank you. I just had a few questions. In terms of the work to create this model service plan and the ordinance as it's presented, can you talk a little bit about how you approached balancing flexibility for developers with the city's responsibility to protect future taxpayers and tenants from long-term financial risk?
Sure. I can take a crack at that, and others feel free to chime in. I think some of the provisions that we outlined attempt to do that. The hard mill levy cap is certainly kind of the biggest or most notable within there. The council feedback at the last time we discussed this on limiting this to a commercial only, commercial primarily metro district is certainly unique, a larger guardrail. I think it's important also to acknowledge that, metro districts are more independent as outlined at the beginning of the presentation. And so there is some inherent trade-off there just based off of the tool. So those are things to consider, but in terms of the council direction provided, staff has tried to bring forward a package that balances that protection with still allowing for a tool that can do what it's intended to do in terms of infrastructure development.
And I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Mark said, but I would also add that the time for regulation of a particular metro district is now, and at the submission of the service plan from the metro district. There's very little the city can do after the metro district is approved. On the other hand, if there's something that is not workable in a particular service plan for a metro district, they always have the option to come back to you all with a modification. And so while the city has significantly less flexibility after the fact, the existence of this independent body, the metro district has flexibility after that.
Thank you. And that leads just a little bit into my next question, which was around the kinds of financial risks that future property owners or tenants might face if some of the financial guardrails and these general guidelines, like the debt limit caps or interest limitations or the transparency requirements were loosened or removed. I was just wondering if you could highlight what some of those risks might be.
Again, happy to start, but others feel free to join the party. I think it really is about what is a total amount of property tax that is palatable for both future property owners, but also tenants that would be paying that in some format. And so, the guardrails are important. Also, the developers are also going to be considering that as they move forward on projects. If they build a project and they're not able to have tenants that are viable because of the property tax, that obviously isn't a good solution for anybody. And so that is a part of the kind of rigorous financial analysis at the outset to see if we have something that ultimately pencils. The guardrails ensure that there is transparency, and so that if 10, 20 years from now you are buying into the district, you have clarity as to what you're buying into and how much it'll cost you. And that is what we can do at the outset of the service plan reviews.
Thank you. And just one last question. I was just wondering, and this may just be because it's 9:30 here. My brain's getting a little tired and needs some concrete examples. Could you give just a few examples of the kinds of regional projects that the 3 mil levy would support and why it's important for these developments to contribute to those costs? I know you mentioned regional road projects and trail systems, but again, my brain would appreciate a little bit more concreteness at this point.
Sure. I might look, Kim, if you have a few examples from other cities. I know it's typically been kind of transportation, connectivity type of stuff, but I don't.
Yeah, that's typically what I see. Bringing in a metropolitan district, whether it's residential or commercial, brings in extra traffic. There's going to be, there might be improvements that you need to streets, to water and sewer for sure. Things that you might need to service, provide more water to that area. And it might be from your water systems and not theirs. So you might have to, add tap fees or add water lines or other types of infrastructure. Mostly what I see is traffic regulation, building extra lanes, widening roads, doing things like that. Some of the metro districts provide park and rec facilities and infrastructure that once those assets are transferred to the city, those are things that you're going to have to operate and maintain or just maintain in the future. Trail systems, things like that are beneficial. They have to be beneficial to the district. So the district isn't going to be paying for the city doing improvements in, another area of the city. It has to kind of touch and relate. So they have to be seeing some benefit for that 3 meals as well. But mostly it's just maintaining the extra infrastructure. Some cities actually hire extra police protection in some areas because they feel like they increased in the number of people or increase in fire because there's just more visibility and more things that you need to provide for in that area.
Great. Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Thanks, Nicole. Taisha.
I just have a few questions. The first is around, I noticed in the report that the racial equity analysis indicated that there was potential displacement of long-term residence rentals and local businesses. So I was curious where in the current ordinance and model service plan where do you feel that we've responded? I'm especially persuaded by your comment around putting the guardrails in now. So just curious if tenant protections or community benefit or tenant option to purchase were things that were considered and or what other policy guardrails were implemented in light of the results of the equity analysis? That's my first question.
Yeah, appreciate the question. I'm happy to speak a bit to that. So we outlined within the equity analysis here that displacement is possible. Our regulatory tools are limited at the outset to try to prevent that. We would certainly look at the impact on community of an individual service plan coming in. And so the model service plan is kind of agnostic of place. When we receive an individual service plan, then we would have a location. We would be able to then see to what scale there's displacement. Is there anything that addresses that? To the point on community benefit, that certainly is something that would be through the regular development review process. So it would be covered a bit there. But our kind of tools at the outset, unless I'm speaking
And
out of step,
specifically
are
to my
limited.
question about the tenant option to purchase and other tenant protections.
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question 100%, but with respect to the potential resident displacement, today we're talking about regulating commercial or industrial metro districts. And to the extent there is a residential component, there's also a guardrail permitting council to exclude or have the metro district exclude the residential portion out of the metro district. So I'm not sure if that's possibly responding to your question.
I think so. Well, again, it goes back to what we just shared with Councilmember Marquis, which was 10% could be residential. And so I don't understand why it's an if 10% can be. So in anticipation for that, what guardrails have been put into place to try to do what we can from a policy that it seems that we would have policy leverage right now to to do everything we can to mitigate displacement of long-term residents, renters, and local businesses. So my question is specific to the renters and to the residents. Were tenant option to purchase, that's a specific policy that one can consider based on the National League of Cities Development Without Displacement report. But another is let's just go with that one. Community
Taisha,
land trusts.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-on question to that?
Sure.
And Mark, to the point that Taisha raises, I think you started to go somewhere about the approval of an eventual service plan. Would we as council and staff have the ability, if a service plan were approved for an area that had a risk of displacement, would we be able to put in guardrails to mitigate that, or
Yeah, and
if
yeah,
that were
kick
present,
me if
that
I'm
risk were
wrong
present?
on this. So council does have broad risk broad discretion in your review of a service plan submitted. You can approve with conditions. Certainly, how much you're able to look at displacement is something we would consider if there was displacement associated with a metro district. The kind of future tenants, that I know less about in terms of what we could put up front, but again, some of the provisions we're putting in the model service plan today help with some of that in capping the overall tax rate and making sure that whatever taxes are there are transparent to anyone buying into the district.
Okay.
And I think it may be helpful to have a broad perspective about, my understanding again of metro districts is they come into play for new development, and so it's rare that there are existing residents or businesses. And council does have the discretion to, when when a service plan comes before you, to actually exclude areas from the boundaries as a condition of approving the service plan. And I can have Kim kick me virtually over there if I'm incorrect. And there's also the option that if there are residents or businesses that object to a potential metro district or being included in a metro district, they actually can submit protests and objections to you all, which needs to be considered. And the law requires them to be notified of the potential metro district organization prior to the hearing on the service plan. And so they'd have an opportunity to protest, object, make themselves known, and you all would have an opportunity to exclude that area as part of the conditions of approval.
Thank you. My next question is around transparency, and I noticed that there was a requirement around the public reports being put on a website. And although I understand that that's the regulatory obligation, I'm curious if the council has the power or authority to strengthen that transparency. I mean, it seems to me that at the very least, the city council should get a report about what's happening and not just have something placed on a website.
So the annual report is submitted to the city. That is something that staff could certainly make public, send to city council and available. The intent being that the city would be able to review the annual activities of a metro district.
Okay. And then my last question is, I noticed that that golf courses were, golf course construction was prohibited. I was curious if data center construction was considered as well.
It was not in the ordinance or model service plan.
But golf courses were. Is that just a standard? I'm just curious. Okay, thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
All right, so it looks like we've reached the end of our questions, so we will go to the public hearing. We have 2 people signed up to speak. Each of you will have 3 minutes to speak. I understand the second individual has an interpreter, so they will have 3 minutes to speak themselves and then 3 minutes for the interpreter to speak. And I will just remind folks to please speak to the topic in front of us of metro districts. So I can go to the other testifier first and then come to you. Okay, so we'll go to Laura Gonzalez as our first speaker and then go to Lynn Siegel. So we'll go to Laura Gonzalez.
Can you hear me?
Laura, your mic is open.
¿Me pueden escuchar?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Ok, muy buenas tardes. A los miembros del consejo que están implícitos en el genocidio, quiero que voten no en este proyecto metropolitano porque no solo va a desplazar a mucha gente, pero también el hecho de que vamos a necesitar más policías. La policía es un desperdicio de recursos. Hay estudios donde mientras más policías hay más confrontaciones violentas, especialmente con la gente. También quiero apoyar a la miembro del consejo, la única que tiene dignidad, Taisha Adams, por hablar de los centros de datos. Este proyecto no puede pasar si no prohíben todos estos centros de datos, porque estos centros de datos están usando mucha agua y estas compañías están haciendo contratos a largo plazo, mientras que nosotros, los ciudadanos, tenemos que pagar estos impuestos. Y ahorita estamos en una bancarrota de agua. Eso no es justo que nosotros estemos pagando eso, mientras que esta gente que viene supuestamente a desarrollar la ciudad hace que nosotros nos suban los impuestos, mientras que ahorita no hay agua en casa, mientras que ahorita estamos bombardeando el Líbano. O sea, ¿y cuántas niñas matamos en Irán? ¿170? Y también quiero que sigan con la prohibición de los campos de golf. Otra cosa es de que no veo ningún beneficio para la gente aquí. O sea, ¿por qué seguimos permitiendo que vengan todas estas compañías fuera, gente que no ha vivido aquí, y vamos a desplazar a gente que ha vivido aquí por largo plazo? Solo porque se va a beneficiar de la estructura de agua que tenemos que construir, que probablemente nuestros impuestos tienen que pagar. Eso no vale la pena. ¿Por qué no podemos hacer más contratos con organizaciones locales para que la gente que ha vivido aquí, especialmente la gente de color, porque ustedes dicen que les importa la equidad racial, para que se queden? ¿Por qué no podemos desinvertir los 38 millones de dólares que mandamos a cada año a un estado genocida en vez de mantenerlo aquí? Eso tampoco se me hace justo. Entonces yo quiero que ustedes voten no, porque no es justo que se nos suban los impuestos y de que haya un tal vez va a desplazar. ¿Cómo que tal vez? O sea, el 10%, ¿y a quién va a desplazar? Seguramente va a desplazar más a la gente negra y a la gente indígena. Y pues no estoy de acuerdo de que sigamos invirtiendo en un genocidio en vez de mantener el dinero aquí, en apoyar a nuestras comunidades negras e indígenas que sigan viviendo aquí, gente indígena como yo. Viva Palestina libre, y espero que todos los sionistas de este consejo.
Move now to the interpretation.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I want to direct myself to the members of this council. I want to say that you should stop supporting genocide. I want you to please stop supporting this bill that is going to bring about more police. Police are a waste of money. Wherever there's more police, there's a waste of resources. They're producing violent confrontations. And in this particular moment, I want to ask the members of this council to also speak on the issues of the data centers. The data centers, and as part of this project, these should be centers that should not come through. This should be prohibited, the data centers, because the data centers are using so much water. And there is so much water in a place where there isn't enough water, but you are producing these data centers. And instead of developing the city, there is not enough development for the city, but there is money for these data centers. And I also want to demand that you prohibit the construction of more golf courses. I would also like to say that Free Palestine, stop the genocide. I want
It's not on
people
the topic of tonight's hearing, so we'll stop you there. Okay, we're going to go to Lynn Siegel. Ma'am, you've had plenty of opportunities to use the restroom. Now is your time to talk.
So I can't have a pee break? Is that correct? I can't pee?
This is your time to speak.
Okie doke. At first, I thought I was going to want to approve this potentially, but Mark convinced me against it because I'm opposed to more and more development on the grounds of water resources devoted to things like this. Mill levy, taxes. I did not approve the library district. I love libraries, but I'm not gonna, and don't tell me it's not related because it's a mill levy. I'm opposed to that. I love libraries, but I don't approve of them being paid for this way. In the same way, the developers can pay their own way. I don't need to be supporting these developers. We have way too much commercial in Boulder already. What are we doing about all that? Why do we need a metro district to expand further? Maybe it could pay for the South Boulder Rec Center like we were talking about tonight, or other rec centers that was brought up. But why can't we pay for our own rec centers by projecting what our maintenance and operations are going to be over the lifetime of any service project we have within our city? The metro districts, can they pay their debt? Do we need it? Do we need a metro district? I don't think so. This whole economy is going to crash shortly because of our supporting Israel. And
Right.
that
Need to stick
amount
to
of
the
money,
topic
that
of
quantity
the
of money, Aaron, do not even think of it. We are spending way too much money on war.
Okay,
Call
that's
it
off
Israel,
topic. Your
call it
time is
Iran.
now
We
over.
don't have
We can cut the mic, please. Okay, your time is up. Right, your time has been ended. Your time has been ended. Please sit down. Your time is over. Please sit down.
Do you want to take me out? Oh, the police can take me out. I get my 3 minutes, Aaron.
Your time is up. You need to stay quiet.
How dare you? I have notes I took, and you're saying I can't.
Ma'am, you need to be quiet. All right, am I going to have to call a...
Forget it. This city council is useless.
All right,
Useless.
quiet now. This is your last warning.
Public at all. You just want to do what you want to do. Screw
All right.
the metro districts.
I'm going to call a recess. All right, so the public hearing is now over, so we'll come back to council for deliberations. So, councilors, any comments on the item in front of us?
Good job.
Matt?
Yeah, you get a cookie break, so pardon me. One thing I want to bring up is one such recommendation that was in the staff's in the memo is really minor, and I think it's one we should consider. It really effectively just gives the word "if," and I think it's a really nice and elegant way to protect. This was regarding to privately placed debt and financing, and normally, and at this point, we don't allow it, but we would in an alternative only if the external financial advisor provides specific analysis and certification that the structure is consistent with the current market standards. And as we've learned from our outside legal counsel, there's only a few external financial advisors that are certified, and oh, lo and behold, we work with one here at the city and who we've trusted for a long time. So again, only if it still provides a helpful guardrail. And so if they meet the conditions that are essential, then we have yet another tool to make these projects pencil out and not be in a position where we're pushing undue costs on the very renters, which exacerbates the very thing we're here to battle, which is affordability in our community. So I think that's a reasonable one to put in there. It's an only if. It's probably still substantive, as our city attorney would say. But nonetheless, it's really small in impact, even though it's substantive to the code in that regard. Just maximum flexibility in that regard, where there's still an appropriate guardrail of having this external independent financial advisor certify that that is a viable path. If they don't, then it's not viable and we move on. So that's something I would recommend for all of us to consider for the model service plan in the resolution of 1378. So I would put that out there.
So council member, if I could just interject, the model service plan right now does allow privately placed debt with that external advisor certification. So
okay, well then that okay, well that didn't okay, because I asked the question if any of these were in place, and the answer I heard was no, they weren't in place. So you're telling me that they are.
So this is about, I believe, specifically compounding interest?
Yes.
oh, compound interest is not allowed.
Right, and that's where this policy alternative allows that compounding interest should and only if an external financial advisor provides that specific analysis. So that's what was written in here as a policy alternative to that question.
Okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I was offering in that earlier question was, do these policy alternatives, are they baked into the service plan? I heard they weren't. And so I was offering that maybe this one would be a viable one for
Okay,
us
so
to
the
consider.
alternative is to allow compound interest for developer debt and or privately placed debt if there's an independent external financial advisor that opines that that is reasonable.
Correct.
Okay.
And can you just, for the record, state the definition of compounding interest, please, that's currently prohibited in the model service plan? Just so everybody's on the same page.
I don't think we have a definition, but.
Or a quick
I'll let Kim
explanation
go
of what
ahead.
it is.
It's just interest on interest. And typically what you see is in initial phases of development, is cash flow bonds. So they borrow $10 million. They don't expect to get paid at all. They're getting whatever the maximum interest rate that they can get. Again, subject to whatever an external financial advisor says is an appropriate interest rate. But they don't make any payments of principal. So every 6 months, the principal essentially becomes interest. I'm sorry, the interest essentially becomes principal. So instead of paying down, you keep compounding, and so the interest keeps building. So what might start out as a $10 million principal amount might end up as a $15 million principal amount. And so that is, in effect, what compounding does. It's just interest on interest, and until you pay principal, that interest doesn't go down.
Thanks for that explanation, so everybody understands now. And can you maybe speak to whether it's common for metro districts to allow that kind of compounding interest?
I honestly, so I guess in full disclosure, we represent cities and towns mostly. We do some metro district representation, but in providing new service plans, almost every new service plan prohibits compounding interest for privately placed or developer debt.
Thanks for
Maybe
that.
not older ones. There are older ones that are in place that don't prohibit that, but mostly what I see now is that.
Okay. Does anybody want to weigh in on this question that we can straw poll it? Ryan?
I have a question if I could. So it's interesting, but I'm curious, staff didn't recommend it. Staff seems to have considered it because it was written in as an alternative. Can staff speak to either the case against or why, what your thoughts on why you didn't recommend it?
Yeah, we certainly considered it. I think as Kim mentioned, we're certainly relying on our council, outside council to guide us based on what they see in other cities, knowing that this is in the model service plan. If there's a specific project, a specific service plan that is proposed that for some reason with a third-party advisor is requiring that type of compounding interest and it is reasonable, we could still consider it during that submittal. So we felt like that flexibility is still retained without making an adjustment to the model service plan.
So can I clarify on that? So what you did say is, even if it's not in there, it's still something that you could discretionarily consider in regards to determining the viability of a project, right? And if for some reason this opportunity were what would help make it viable, that's still something you consider, even though it's not written specifically in the service plan.
That's correct.
Okay, I appreciate that.
May I add that I think if you do make that change for individual projects, you're going to get every developer coming in and saying that you did it for this person and we're this. I mean, it's just you might as well just make it now, I think, and just put it in your model if that's what council decides they want to do. I just think that's kind of I think interest is more of a, in my opinion, materiality. Certainly, you can. It's up to you. But.
Thanks, and
thank you.
I got Nicole.
Thank you. So I wanted to touch on this last point just a little bit more. So if a future project were to come in, we can make changes, right? So we could address this compounding interest issue at that point. But what I just heard you say is that if that is something that we think we might do on a routine basis or even once or twice, we might want to consider a change here. Because I was just thinking about this more as the place where we can set some really general guardrails that would apply kind of unless a future council were to decide that someone should have an exception.
Yeah, I don't really hear a question, so I think what are you asking specifically?
Oh, I guess I'm trying to figure out. Initially, I was thinking that this would be having the sorry, there's an ambulance or fire truck going by. If a future project were to come in with a strong justification for why they should have have a change in the compounding interest issue or any other one, right? We could change it at that point, I'm understanding. But what I also just heard you say is that that doing it once might open the door to everybody. And so if there's something that we think we might say yes to one time, we might want to consider that putting in the general ordinance or putting that in this general ordinance.
Yeah, I think, again, this is just my opinion. I think if you're limiting interest rates, that really isn't project specific, right? So that's something that would apply to any developer note, any financing is going to have an interest component. It is very common when metro districts actually sell their bonds to the public and they still don't have a lot of development, but they have some development. And maybe, again, when they're refunding developer reimbursements or refunding developer notes, a lot of investors that are accredited investors that buy bonds on the market want compounding interest. And that is not prohibited by the service plan. They are asking for that because at that point in the development, these bonds are really risky because they don't know if it's going to develop yet. You're advancing money on something that has started. You're refunding a developer because you've got some development, but it's still at this phase. There's not a lot of assessed value. And these investors and the bonds being sold to the public to these specific investors, and they're called accredited investors because they do this they know the risks that they're taking and they get higher interest rates and they get compounding interest. But these bonds are sold to the public. So it's a little bit different than when you sell a bond to an individual or you privately place a bond to an individual. The service plan does require that you still get a financial advisor to even even just attest to the interest rate. Because, and I'm not saying anything about developer, but for example, if a developer comes in and wants an 18% interest rate on their reimbursement, that's probably not market driven at this point. So having or maybe it is. So based on whatever the current market is and what the risk involved is, this external financial advisor can tell you whether the 12 or 18% interest rate is reasonable. And at that point, they can issue bonds to a privately placed individual, which would include a bank. So sometimes like, Bank of America will come in and do a privately placed deal.
I think you've answered the question. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you for
thank
that. I heard Nicole, let me check. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I know it does. Thank you. And I think just in reply to Matt's comments, I'm comfortable leaving the model service plan as it exists right now, and not necessarily making any changes to it tonight. This does feel like it's our initial opportunity to set some broad and protective guardrails on these metro districts. I think there's still opportunity for developers to ask for flexibility in the individual service plans, and us or a future council will retain full discretion to evaluate those requests case by case. To me, looking at that case by case basis and setting these general guardrails that staff has spent a lot of time on, creating a nice balance between what will be protective to future taxpayers and what is helpful for developers right now. I'm really not interested in making a lot of changes at this point. We'll have that opportunity as these individual service plans come in. And if there is a future moment where we realize that there need to be some changes made, we can update this ordinance like we do with so many others, right? And create changes at that point. But I also just want to take a moment to say thank you to staff, because this is an amazing amount of work in a very short period of time that we gave you. And I just wanted to acknowledge everything that went into this. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. So I'd like to go ahead and straw poll interest in the suggestion, and so we can move to passage of the ordinance, hopefully. So Matt had a suggestion that we would potentially allow compounding interest if validated by an external financial advisor. So if you would be interested in changing the model service plan to reflect that, please raise your hand right now. I got 5. So it looks like there is council interest in doing that. So staff, what I would ask then, what would be the mechanism there? Because we probably are not going to alter the resolution on the fly.
We would recommend to bring that back on consent at the next regular meeting with the noted change.
Very good. So tonight, would we approve the ordinance but defer on the resolution? Okay, very good.
Process question?
Yep.
Do we defer to a date certain?
Do you know when you would, because we would have to continue the item, right?
For the resolution, you do not have to.
Okay.
It's the ordinance that requires the public hearing. A resolution does not require a public hearing. And so because of that, you would not have to defer to a date certain.
Thanks for the clarification. So in other words, we can take action on the ordinance, not take action on the resolution, and just leave it at that. Okay. In that case, any further discussion or perhaps a motion on the ordinance? Taisha.
I just wanted to lift up the data center conversation again and just share that after some consideration around the current zoning that would make it very challenging for data centers to ever be considered here, as well as the hopeful update to the form-based code in 2027 where we could be more explicit. I don't feel like it's necessary to add an explicit section on prohibiting data centers at this time, although it continues to be a concern of mine, but I don't want to add more complexity if it's not necessary at this time. Thank you.
Anybody want to pipe up?
No, I'll read the motion though.
Yeah, go for it.
Where is it? Can somebody put it up there? Oh.
I move that we approve on second reading.
Where? Big fail on my part. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I move that we approve on second reading to adopt Ordinance 8748 enacting Chapter 8-12 Metropolitan Districts, Boulder Revised Code 1981, and setting forth related details. And not any more than that.
Second.
That was a tie. Tara, do you want to? Tina claims the second.
Tina did it. Let's be honest.
Tara, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'm so excited that we're finally doing this. That's the real truth. Yay.
And Alicia, did you catch the second? Okay. Tina, did you want to speak to it? Okay. Yeah, Matt would like to speak.
I just want to give credit to staff. This is one of the biggest deliverables from our new economic development strategy. And so I just want to give kudos to Mark and the whole team and legal for navigating this in really quick order. I remember when we first even threw this idea out, it was a foreign concept for most. And here we are getting it done. So I just, again, testament to the work, the speed, but also we're setting the bar. We can do things quickly. So it's a dangerous precedent we've set here. So keep it up, appreciate it. But this is a great big checkbox on the economic development strategy that we've all approved and wanting to go forth on. So great job and looking forward to DDAs next and vacancy right after that.
Yeah, I'll call myself and echo those thanks. We did ask for a really aggressive timetable on this, and you have delivered on that aggressive timetable with some absolutely top-notch work. So really appreciative to the city staff for executing on this, and also to our consultant support for getting us to this very positive outcome. So big thanks all around. With that, let's do a roll call, please, Alicia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll start the roll call for Ordinance 8748 with Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhart.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
Wallach.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Weiner.
Definitely yes.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes.
And Benjamin.
Yes.
Ordinance 8748 is hereby adopted unanimously.
All right. Thanks again. And we'll go to our final item, which is a matter from the city manager.
Yes, sir. Our matters from the city manager are item 6 on tonight's agenda. 6A is our legislative update.
Chris, do you want to provide some walk-on commentary?
Yeah, we're gonna vamp here a little bit as we shuffle the seats. We should have walk-on music. I won't ask you, Heather, what your walk-on music song would be. Yeah. But we are going to transition to our legislative update, and Heather Stauffer, our Intergovernmental Affairs Officer, is here to present that item, and that also included some late-breaking information that came this week, as well as from the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee that came out over Hotline. And with that, how am I doing, Heather? You ready? Let's do it.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, Council. Heather Stauffer, Intergovernmental Affairs Officer for the city. I believe we also have Will Coyne, the city's lobbyist, virtually. I'm here to provide you with an update on the General Assembly's legislative session. We'll talk about priority bills that we're following, the state budget. I'll give an update on the outcome of House Bill 1001, the Home Act, to close the loop on that, and then talk briefly about a new tool that we're working on to keep you updated about the work that we're doing during the session. I also sent a hotline yesterday, as Chris mentioned, regarding 2 additional items that I've added to talk following our IGA committee. House Bill 1308, lot splitting, and an update on the city's position on Senate Bill 150, the RTD modernization bill. And we will have 2 questions for council. Next slide, please. So currently where we stand, the General Assembly began its work on January 14th of this year. They are constitutionally limited to a 120-day legislative session, which adjourns sine die on May 13th at midnight. So that leaves them with about 28 days to pass a balanced budget and any remaining legislation. As of today, they have about 400 bills left on the calendar to get through. There's a well-known saying amongst people who work at the Capitol that there's two halves of the legislative session, the first 100 days and the last 20 days. So this timeline, while it seems rather broad, is very normal. What that means for us is we're getting to crunch time. The speed at which legislation is considered will pick up substantially from here on out. So as expected, the $1.2 billion budget deficit has driven substantial cuts across state departments. And we're hearing that the Joint Budget Committee has left no room for new legislation with appropriations on it this year. So we may see more bills die in Appropriations Committee this year than in years past. Next slide, please. This is a recap of Council's 5 priorities for state advocacy this year. Council has asked that we focus on funding and protecting homelessness services, establish an on-bill repayment program, protect essential state funding, and work to ensure the city can implement our AI policies while ensuring consumer rights and civil liberties are maintained, and then also support equal access protections as outlined and affirmed in the city's Human Rights Ordinance. Next slide, please. So the first bill that I'm going to touch on as relates to our priority legislation is House Bill 1202. This is a strategy to reduce and prevent homelessness. This bill aims to support local jurisdictions' cooperative homelessness responses by allowing the creation of a new type of special district that locals can choose to participate in regionally, specifically to coordinate and fund homelessness response. It also allows counties to direct a portion of their documentary filing fees towards affordable housing if they choose. The bill also makes specific requirements of the state, specifically the Department of Local Affairs, and requires them to create a statewide homelessness prevention strategy, which it will then present to the legislature in January of 2027. The city is in a support position on this bill. It's passed both the House Local Government Committee and the Senate Local Government Committee, and it's waiting to be considered on Senate second reading. So we're going to continue to lobby in support of that bill as it moves through the process. Next slide, please. The next priority bill that we're working on is Senate Bill 148. This is a financing utility on-bill repayment program. The city's been working on this policy for several years now. This year, we're working in partnership with Boulder County, the Governor's Office, the Colorado Clean Energy Fund, and a number of environmental organizations, and I'm optimistic that the bill is going to make it over the finish line this year. The policy itself establishes a statewide on-bill repayment process through expanding the Colorado Clean Energy Fund's existing on-bill repayment program. This will allow homeowners who do not have the upfront capital to purchase things like heat pumps or make energy upgrades to their homes or businesses, and it will allow them the ability to pay off those upgrades over time on their existing utility bills. So we're hopeful that this will help residents who may have otherwise been not able to participate in the energy upgrades, the ability to do so, and help also contribute to Boulder's emission reduction goals. Mayor Brockett testified in support on behalf of the city on Monday in the Senate Energy Environment Committee. The bill passed 6-3, so it's waiting in the Appropriations Committee currently. Next slide, please. I wanted to provide a brief update on AI policy. We still do not have a bill that's been introduced. The Governor's AI Policy Working Group has a draft policy that they've agreed to that has been agreed to by all participants. However, it's unclear whether that agreement will hold when the bill is introduced. I'm hearing some rumblings that there could be some fights in the legislature when that bill is introduced. So more to come on that. For our purposes, the draft bill does address many of the concerns around overly broad definitions and compliance challenges that our staff were concerned with, but we will be involved in that legislation when it's dropped and moving through the process. Next slide, please. So Colorado is facing a roughly $1.2 to $1.5 billion shortfall, depending on what projections you look at, and that's due to several factors. So Medicaid costs are growing about 9% each year. The state's Tabor cap only allows state revenue to grow by 3.6%, inflation plus population, but health care costs are obviously outpacing that. If you layer on the federal HR 1 tax bill cuts, then that gives us the crisis that we're in now. The legislature made roughly about $270 million cuts in Medicaid reimbursements. They made deep cuts in departmental spending, and they lowered state reserves. They're prioritizing K through 12 education and universal pre-K, which is what we knew. I wanted to highlight a couple of the orbital bills that we're working on. Orbital bills are passed in conjunction with the long bill. House Bill 1399 is the elimination of the annual transfers for multimodal funding. We're working with a group of stakeholders to get an amendment put on that bill that allows the sweep to happen this year, recognizing that there's no way to save that money for this year. It's about $10.5 million, but it preserves the transfers for future years. So hopefully in a few years, maybe we'll be out of this crisis and we can continue to get those that funding from the general fund into multimodal. We didn't want to burn down the entire infrastructure. We're also working on House Bill 1409, the retail marijuana sales tax distribution. The bill eliminates the current requirement that 3.5% of gross retail marijuana sales tax revenue be distributed to local governments. That would put about $150K hole in our local budget. And so we're working on an amendment that actually just got put on yesterday to preserve that local government distribution of retail marijuana sales tax revenue, not for this year again, but it preserves the infrastructure for future years. So we're really happy that that went on, and we'll work to ensure that it sticks, hopefully. The last piece of this that I wanted to mention was an amendment that went on in the House to the long bill. This was put on by Representative Marshall, and it reduces the appropriations to the Office of the Governor by $200,000 for the Office of Film and Television and Media, and it reduces that appropriation by $100,000 for tourism promotion. The reason that this is important is because the Office of Film is the one that would provide the Sundance tax credit, and so this would directly affect their full-time employees, and they let me know that this would impact their ability to provide that tax credit. So this went on in the House. This luckily did not go on in the Senate. There's a little bit of a different procedure for how amendments are added to the long bill. Because it did not go on in the Senate, we will work when the bill comes to a conference committee to strip that off in coordination with the governor's office, and I'm optimistic that we can get that amendment stripped off in the conference committee. Next slide, please. I wanted to close the loop with council on House Bill 1001, the Home Act, which was signed into law. In February, council identified 5 areas of concern with that bill, and from the feedback, we were able to negotiate with the sponsors, and we received several amendments that addressed 3 of council's concerns, but there are outstanding issues that we were not able to address in the bill. So you'll see on the slides, we were able to address the development in unincorporated counties, effectively eliminating development in unincorporated Boulder County, except for Gun Barrel. We were able to address height limitations. The height limitations were lowered to 38 feet in the bill from 45 feet as originally drafted. And we also got an amendment that adds housing needs assessments and housing action plans to the criteria that an applicant must align with if the city so chooses. We unfortunately were not able to get any amendments addressing nonprofits, partnerships with nonprofits with a demonstrated history of providing affordable housing, and then a comprehensive plan alignment. So those were the 2 outstanding issues there. Next slide, please. So Senate Bill 150, RTD modernization. The longer summary of this bill was included in the hotline email from yesterday. It's a long bill with many different components, but just to give a very high-level overview, the bill makes changes to RTD that are mostly based on the recommendations that came out of the RTD Accountability Committee. Most of the bill is focused on the board restructuring, making it smaller, moving from 15 elected board members to 5 elected and 4 appointed by the governor. 2 of those appointed board members would be from a list provided by Dr. Cog, and the other 2 would be from just straight governor appointments. So the bill makes various changes to how districts are drawn, board compensation, operations, board accountability, and it also requires RTD to do an analysis on paratransit services. Based on feedback and recommendations from the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, the city's taken an amend position on this bill. We want to see RTD reform, and within that, we want to ensure that Boulder is adequately represented on the board. So we're asking for elected representation to be increased from 5 to 7 board members. We're also asking that the threshold for signatures for candidates be lowered from 1,000 currently in the bill to 500 to not be overly prohibitive. And we want to add language to the bill to ensure that board appointees are picked to intentionally fill gaps on the board in terms of expertise to ensure diverse backgrounds, including racial, cultural, disability, and gender backgrounds as well. Next slide, please. All right, so House Bill 1308, lot splitting approval by subject jurisdictions. This was also included in the hotline. Throwback to Hotmail. This was also included in the hotline from yesterday. This bill would allow property owners to split one lot into 2 new lots on or after December 31st, 2027, subject to an administrative approval process if the lot meets specific criteria as outlined in the bill and is not considered an exempt lot as outlined in the bill. The bill also makes various requirements of properties that are subject to a lien and getting approval from the lien holder to allow a split. The IGA committee discussed this bill and recommended an oppose unless amended position. The amendments that were recommended were exempting lots that are located within the wildland-urban interface, or the WUI. This bill has the potential to create lots of density for housing, and the committee agreed that there are areas of the city where creating density actually could create a fire hazard because fire spreads quicker through housing that is close together. So we would seek exemptions for areas in the WUI. Similarly, promoting density in flood zones may lead to adverse safety outcomes for residents, and so the committee recommended exempting lots located in 100-year flood zones. Finally, the committee recommended asking for communities who are in compliance with House Bill 24-1313, the Housing and Transit-Oriented Communities Bill, to be exempt if they so choose. That legislation requires municipalities to meet specific housing opportunity goals and increase density around transit centers specifically. The committee felt that if a community is already working to meet the density goals outlined in that bill, but specifically wanted to focus on transit centers, then they should have the option of being exempt from the lot splitting requirements in the bill. Next slide, please. I'll briefly mention this is just a quick preview of a new tool that we're working on to provide the council with more up-to-date information on state legislation. This would be in addition to the public website that has a link to all of our positions that we've taken and is updated in real time, so it's not in place of that. But this dashboard would provide council with a central point for state level advocacy. We're going to summarize our priorities and highlight bills that speak directly to our priorities in here. Next slide. And I'm also hoping that this will be an area that we can highlight upcoming opportunities for council member testimony and also give a legislative tracker that includes more relevant information specifically for council. So we'll hopefully be sending a link out to that soon, so please look for that. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation, and we have 2 questions for council, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let's start with clarifying questions for Heather. Tara?
Re the Marshall Amendment. So I assume that we're not excited about how that went down as a city, right? So do we not worry about it? Do you suggest that we do something as a council, write to our representatives, or where should we go from here? Or do you not even want to give that advice?
Thank you for the question. Because of where we are in that process, I think that we have confirmed that Senator Mobley is also not excited about that amendment. Will, if you're online, you can correct me if that's wrong. So I don't know that there's an action for the council to take at this moment. But it's always good to reinforce the fact that the city has put in lots of time, lots of infrastructure into preparing for Sundance. And I think that's always a message that can be reiterated to our representatives and senators.
And Will, I see you popped on camera. Do you want to address that at all?
I just confirm what Heather said. I think she's right. And while it's frustrating, I think it's very, very likely that that amendment will come off and stay off in conference. So we should be okay for this particular issue.
That's reassuring.
So do you think we should write to our representatives in the House or no at this point?
I don't think you need to at this point, honestly. Yeah.
Any other question, Brian?
Thanks. Just our three amendments, do we have feedback from the author on receptivity to the three? Sorry if I missed this, if you just said it.
Can you specify what bill you're talking about?
So, yeah, sorry, 1308.
1308.
First question, yeah.
I have not yet addressed that. We just discussed those, so I have not yet let the sponsors know that we're seeking those amendments, but I will.
Thank you.
Very soon.
Great. I appreciate the presentation. Boy, it's been a heck of a session. My question has to do with the AI bill. This seems like, there's been multiple bites at the apple to try to get something through. So this has obviously been well thought through. Do you see this being kind of an 11th hour drop to avoid the sort of proverbial death by 1,000 cuts for this bill? Or do you really see this as just not getting to the finish line?
Boy, that's a really good question. And I don't know. Will, do you have a thought on that at all at this point? Because there's several different outcomes. It could be that nothing gets done this session, in which case the new timeline would take effect. It could be that several bills are introduced from industry, from others. So, Will, what do you think about that?
I appreciate the question, and I will say, after working in that building for 20 years, there are many issues where, you can look down the road and see clearly what is going to happen. And I think this is such a both complicated policy, and then the politics are so complicated because there are so many interests involved that it is really, really hard to say. I will tell you, I think it is probably a slightly more than 50% likelihood that something gets through that changes the landscape. But we are not going to know. And honestly, there are very few outcomes right now that would be shocking.
All right, not seeing any other questions, then let's go to yeah, you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I just had a question for the on-bill payment one, if generators made it on. I know that heat pumps were already there, but I was curious if that was something that had been discussed and or given the increase in PSPS.
I might call Lifeline for this one. I know that Carolyn is online, and she can definitely answer this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Carolyn Neelam, Senior Manager with the Climate Initiatives Department. And thank you for your question, Councilmember Adams. The bill itself is intended explicitly to support the types of things that utilities are incentivizing. So we do envision it, for example, supporting addition of battery backup, but not gas generator backup. That's not something that's typically rebated by our utilities, even our municipal or co-op utilities.
Okay, so it's currently not being considered, although I thought the whole idea was to try and do something that meets the moment. So based on where our community has been over the last even year around the increase in wind, the lack of moisture, and we can anticipate more, again, but it does sound like batteries are covered.
Correct. Many of our utilities, including Xcel Energy, do have incentive programs to support battery backup, and so that would be included. And then definitely look forward to having this conversation in more depth with you next week, also as we're talking to you about the power reliability and resilience topic.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, so let's go to answering the questions that staff has posed to us. The first one is, if the city receives the proposed amendments on HB 261308, would council support moving the city position from oppose unless amended to monitor? And this is the lot splitting related bill. And do you mind just turning back to that slide on the presentation, Heather, so that we've got those in front of us? Matt?
I'm gonna ask. This is the House Bill 1308. This is
Just go back 2 or 3
slide
slides.
10.
There you go.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna make a quick pitch for yes, if we get what we want, we should support this. Because that's usually a good faith when you're advocating for changes and you get what you want, you should then support. The reason is then if we have the ability, right, it just makes sense to do that. I think that's an appropriate thing when you ask for amendments and you get them, you should support. It's just good faith for Heather and our lobbyists when they're advocating in good faith to do that. If you pull the rug out after asking for stuff, I think that harms us at the negotiating table for other things. So you may not love this bill, but if we get what we want, we should support it.
Do you mind if I throw in a counterpoint there, Matt? Because I think, like, I would agree with you if we were in an amend position, but since we're in oppose unless amended, then by moving to monitor, that's moving us out of being in a general oppose position into monitoring. So, but Heather, maybe you can address how do these generally work out if you get your asks from an oppose unless amended kind of position?
So typically, if you are in an oppose unless amended, you would move to a monitor position if you receive your amendments. However, there's no rule.
There's no rule. Yeah.
So we can take whatever position we want if in the event that we receive all 3 amendments. So that would be up to council.
Yeah, fair point.
I go either way.
Okay, Brian?
So I'd be more inclined to be in a amend position now and then moving to a support if we get our amendments. I know there's a principled view coming from different places to not do that, but I just think this is, you know what, I won't make the case, but that's what I'd support.
Okay, got it.
I was going to call quick for Heather on a clarification. So at the SOS office, we actually register as just amend. There is not an oppose unless amend, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. So the Secretary of State's office only has oppose, amend, monitor, and support. But on our public website, we can list oppose unless amended, which we often do.
And we do so that if the current form stayed true, we would oppose it. And that's what that's meant to indicate for our own advocacy. But just so you know, so we're officially amend, but for our own, it's slightly different. Okay. Were you looking for us to do that for our own internal?
If if I'm following this correctly, I'd prefer, sorry, so is there not a more neutral and amend position that, in principle we could take?
Yeah, we could take a position of amend instead of oppose unless amended.
Yeah, so that'd be
which
my
is what you're
preference,
advocating
and then
for.
move to a support if we begin our criteria.
And I'll straw poll our options in a bit here. Mark? And Tina?
Yeah, I'm very much opposed to this bill. It's yet another attempt to interfere with our home rule authority in terms of how we make land use decisions and how we treat our real estate. And I think it's another in a series of overreaches by the governor's office and the legislature. And so I am essentially opposed to this. I don't see a good outcome for this, although if push comes to shove, I think oppose unless amendment is at least a decent place to start. And maybe we then do move to monitor if we get what we want. But this is not a bill we ought to be supporting if we want to preserve any aspect of our home rule authority. And we have been, I think, somewhat delinquent in doing so in light of some of the bills the governor has and the legislature have proposed. So I am definitely opposed unless amended. And then if we move to monitor, I'll probably still be opposed, but at least we can have a different analysis of where we are and what the politics are in light of the actual provisions of the bill.
Thanks. Tina?
Yeah, I'm pretty aligned with Councilmember Wallach on this. And I would just also add that in terms of the housing in the WUI, it's not also just the flammability, but it's also the ability to evacuate higher densities near the WUI corridors and in floodplains. And the other piece is we made a commitment to pursue transit-oriented density. This year has been the year where we switched to sprawl. And I feel like we had made that first commitment and brought our community along with it. And then to turn around and say, well, actually, it's we're moving away from the transportation focus, and now we'll sprawl anywhere throughout the Boulder County. And so I think this is a real indication where we have been on a very good path with our own leadership and judgment. And I think that oppose unless amended is appropriate. And I think number 3 is critical to be able to move to a monitor position because of the commitment we made. We will not be able to provide transportation out to Gun Barrel yet in a way that's meaningful and that will reduce VMT over time.
Thanks. I got Rob, and then I'm going to maybe move to straw polls if that's the last comments.
I just want to.
I don't have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Nicole, I missed you. I'll get to you in a second. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Nicole. I just want to concur with my colleagues, and I'm just going to add that House Bill 1001 is just another bill that's chipping away at the home rule, and I just see a pattern of this here coming from the governor's office.
Thanks. Nicole?
Thanks. Yeah, I think on this one, if we're moving anywhere, if we get our requested amendments, I would prefer that we move to monitor. Starting out with oppose unless amended instead of just straight up opposing honestly felt like a compromise when we were discussing it in IGA. It sounds like that's probably a compromise. Hearing the conversation now, it feels a little bit like a sleight of hand to say that because we're technically in an amend position, even though what we wanted was oppose unless amended, but because we're technically, because of the Secretary of State system, in that amend position that we should move to support. That feels like a bit too many jumps for me. But monitor, if we move anywhere, if we're able to get these amendments, I think that would be appropriate given what I'm hearing from the conversation and the diversity of opinions here. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, so I'll go ahead and straw poll if that feels like the right place to go next. So my first thing I'm going to straw poll is Ryan's suggestion that we take an amend position instead of an oppose unless amended. But, Ryan?
Sorry to be out of order, but I didn't say anything on this, and I'm the only person in this position. I just kind of moved on. I said I won't make the case. Can I just real briefly say,
Yep.
I think this is an opportunity to give property owners more rights while at the same time increasing housing options that we need. And this will statewide is likely to create more meaningful stock of housing that we need, which benefits Boulder. So I think it's a tool we should use.
Thanks for that. But I'm unclear. Were you withdrawing your proposal?
No, speaking for it, speaking in support of it.
Yes. So your proposal is to have us change from oppose unless amended to amend.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'll straw poll all in favor of making that change to our position. All right. We got one. So not going to take that one up. But then our next question. Okay. So our position will be oppose unless amended. Now, if we get our 3 requested amendments, do we want to take a monitor position? Oh, okay. Okay. Matt pulls his request. So that would mean unless somebody else wants to take it up, we will plan on taking a monitor position if we get our 3 proposed amendments. Can people work with that? Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads. So looks like we will stay on the track here, oppose unless amended, and if we get our 3 amendments, we'll move to monitor. Great. And then I think your other question was whether we have any questions, which we've already asked, or feedback on where we are in the legislative process. Does anybody have any additional feedback on the legislative agenda? Ryan?
I just wanted to say thank you to the IGA committee and Heather for such great work. This is an excellent presentation, and you all have done an incredible amount of analysis and time, and appreciate your commitment to it.
Thanks for that. It's a good group. And Heather, thank you so much. I know you took our call yesterday from down at the Capitol. I know you're spending a huge amount of time down there working very hard for the city's interests, and we appreciate your efforts there very much.
Thanks. It's a team effort. So thank you to Will and Megs and everyone involved.
Yes, and Will Coyne as well, and Meg's Valier as well for her work as well in the advocacy area. All right, that brings us to the end of that agenda item, which is in fact the end of our entire agenda. So, did you want to say something quick?
Yeah, isn't there matters from City Council, just update? I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate Manuela Stewart. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your last name. Cifuentes, for their better because of her award from the YWCA this afternoon. And so just such a tremendous City of Boulder staff member who's done so much to increase and strengthen our language access programs. And again, just wanted to lift that up and say congratulations. Thank you.
I'll second that. That was at the YWCA luncheon today that she was given that award, and it was really exciting to see. Manuel does amazing work. All right, and that brings us to our close. I will gavel us out at 8:40 p.m. 5 minutes early.